Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Back in the classroom, Yaru finally suppressed the excitement in his heart. Hey. Yumiko crossed her fair, beautiful legs and turned to face Yoru. What is it? Yoru was startled and stiffly turned his head. They had swimming class tomorrow. Could it be that Yumiko remembered how he accidentally glanced at her that day and was now out for revenge? Even at school, people who had no grudges with Yoru still found him unpleasant and played pranks on him. Stuffing trash in his shoe locker, scribbling on his desk, and so on. You helped Yua that day, right? Yumiko examined the fat otaku in front of her. I guess. Yaru froze for a moment before realizing what she meant. Don't expect Yua to repay you for something that small, or else. As she spoke, Yumiko narrowed her long eyes, exuding an intense pressure worthy of her title as the fiery queen in school. Yoru nodded, feeling like he'd just dodged a bullet. After school in the afternoon, Yoru packed up his things and headed to the service club, feeling both nervous and excited. The weather's gloomy again? Stepping out of the classroom, he glanced up and sighed at the sky. It wasn't good news for him. Arriving at the service club, he happened to see Yukino unlocking the door and greeted her. Yuagahama-san isn't coming today. Yukino opened the door and said blandly. Yuagahama-san? Yoru looked puzzled. Just the 2 of us in here. I hope you won't get any weird ideas, peeping pervert. Yukino placed her bag on the desk. You're still bringing that up. It was just an accident. And besides. Yoru mumbled softly without showing any resentment. After all, Yukino was his tutoring teacher. Chapter 48, likes to roll her eyes. Once the door closed, without the usual energy from Yuagahama, the service club was unusually quiet. Sit across from me. Yukino unzipped her bag while glancing at Yoru, who was about to sit by the table. Oh, okay. Yoru didn't quite understand but obediently moved his chair over. Nervously sitting across from Yukino, he began observing the icy beauty before him. Do you like what you see? Yukino asked coldly as she pulled out a small stack of notes from her bag. Why yeah. Yoru jumped a little in surprise. Then please don't keep staring at me like that. It's unsettling and makes me uncomfortable. Yukino lifted her head to meet Yoru's eyes. Sorry. Yoru quickly lowered his head. Look at this. Yukino pushed the notes she took out toward him. These were materials she had stayed up last night to dig out from her past study notes and resources. Yoru had terrible grades, weak foundations, and fragmented knowledge. To sprint, one must first learn to stand. Your foundation is too poor. You need to start reviewing from the basics. She explained. Yoru nodded and picked one notebook from the stack Yukino handed him. Opening to a random page, it wasn't filled with densely packed text as he expected. Instead, it was a very neat page with a short section, clean and elegant handwriting. It included textbook page references, progress notes, and key points to focus on. Nothing seemed too difficult. At a glance, it was clear and easy to understand. Yoru was a bit surprised and impressed. He picked up another one. It was from a different subject, but just as well organized. Yukino remained silent the entire time. Only after Yoru finished browsing did she speak. These are my past notes. Take them and study on your own. And this is the goal I've set for you. If your overall score doesn't rank in the top 30 this school year, you'll be expelled, right? She picked up a red notebook and flipped to the last page, which had a detailed plan written on it. No problem, I'll do my best. Yoru said with determination and gratitude. It was clear that Yukino had put in serious effort. Say. Yukino Shita-san, do you think I have hope? Yoru tentatively asked, anxiously waiting for her reply. If you can follow the plan I made, and if your IQ is average and you work hard enough, you should be able to manage. Yukino answered without even looking up. I'll definitely work hard. Yoru took a deep breath. Really? I think hitting 50% is already quite good. Yukino immediately replied. You're underestimating me? Yoru asked back. We'll see in a week. I hope you prove me wrong. Yukino stood up. I will. Don't make bold claims, peeping pervert, shoe thief. That wasn't me. When I was little, people used to steal my shoes because I was too cute. What do you think boys do with stolen shoes? Yukino Shita-san, aren't you listening to me? And you weren't listening to me either? Enough. Come with me to get some chalk and tools. I'm going to tutor you now. From 3:30 p.m. to around 5:00 p.m. Yura stayed alone with Yukino in the service club, receiving her strict tutoring. If word got out, every boy in school would probably die of envy. Getting forcefully tutored by the school's icy beauty. Just imagining it felt so lewd. In reality, after the session, Yura stretched his sore arms and back with a sigh of relief. Yukino had launched into a full-on lecture like a strict teacher. Yoru didn't dare relax for a second, listening attentively, answering questions, asking his own, and enduring the icy beauty's sharp tongue. It also showed how seriously Yukino took her role. Thank you, Yukino Shita-san. I really don't know what to say. Packing up his bag, Yoru thanked her again before leaving. This was a request from Hiratsuka-sensei. Since I accepted it, I'll give it my all. Peeping pervert, don't get any funny ideas. Yukino replied crisply, keeping her distance. She didn't even want Yoru to feel indebted to her. Yoru scratched his head awkwardly and walked off. The service club was on the top floor of the club building, and there was no restroom on that floor. Yoru went down to use the restroom, and as he walked past one of the club rooms, someone inside suddenly opened the door. He was far enough not to be startled, but the three girls inside were visibly spooked. You fat creep. What's he doing here? So gross. Harry, let's walk faster. Ugh, disgusting. Three girls from the art club huddled around Harry, speeding up and throwing looks of disgust at Yoru. Normally cold and aloof, even Harry gave Yoru a scornful look and rolled her pretty eyes just to blend in. Innocent Yoru stopped silently where he was. Only after they walked away did he start moving again. That damn fair-skinned half-blood bitch. He had never wronged her. Why did she always look down on him and roll her eyes? Do they really like rolling their eyes that much? Feeling down the entire way, Yoru's mood was as gloomy as the sky. He left Shuchin alone. He went straight to the station at the end of the shopping street and caught a ride home. While waiting on the platform, he ran into Yukino and greeted her. What a coincidence, heading home. No, I'm going to the police station to report a peeping pervert. Yukino sighed like she had accepted her fate. That reply shut Yoru up. He'd only meant to say hello after bumping into her. He didn't intend to strike up a conversation. Still, thankfully Yukino was a decent person, not like Utaha with her paranoia. A while later, the train arrived. At this hour, the car was a bit packed. Yoru's large build came in handy. He easily got into the car and snagged a spot near the door. To be exact, it was enough for 3 people. He sat down comfortably. Yukino waited until the crowd settled before boarding. She grabbed a hand strap and glanced at Yoru, who was standing silently. At first, Yoru didn't think much of it. But once the train started moving, he suddenly wondered if Yukino was blaming him for taking up too much space. Feeling awkward, he shrank himself down a bit, left enough room for half a person, and moved his backpack to cover his lap to signal her. After hesitating, Yukino walked over and sat beside him. In Japan, being severely obese is practically a crime, Kitakami-kun. She hugged her bag and spoke in a detached tone. The next second, Yoru's reaction surprised her. He went silent. His energy completely deflated. I have a medical condition that caused my obesity. That one short sentence brought back countless painful memories Yoru had buried deep in his heart. Chapter 49, The Knot in the Heart, a medical condition? That answer caught Yukino completely off guard. She pursed her lips, realizing something was off with Yoru's reaction. She understood her words had hit a nerve. She had always assumed Yoru was fat just because he was lazy, gluttonous, and didn't like to exercise. She hadn't expected there to be more to it. Yukino didn't ask further. Instead, she cleared her throat and quickly tried to think of something else to say. Ahem. How's your cat doing? You mean San-san? Yukino looked at Yoru's side profile and spoke gently, as if afraid of upsetting him further. But just thinking about the cat made her feel a little envious of the fat otaku in front of her. So lucky, to just pick up a stray with such high charm stats. Sometimes she'd try to approach strays to pet them, but they'd always run away like she was a plague. She's doing well. Gain more weight too. You like cats, don't you? Yukino nodded as she replied. Yeah, but the apartment I live in doesn't allow pets. It's a shame. Yukino quietly sighed in relief. I live in an apartment too. What kind of crappy apartment doesn't allow cats? Yoru thought, but didn't say anything out loud. He wasn't really in the mood to chat anymore. A few minutes later, the train reached the next station. Yukino stood up, and after exchanging polite goodbyes, got off. Looks like she lives close to school. Just one stop away. Yoru watched her leave the car. It was around 5:30 when Yoru returned to his apartment. At the front door of Gabriel's place, he saw her talking to a purple-haired girl wearing a Shuchin uniform. He greeted them. "This is my classmate, Vignette. And this is my neighbor and friend, Kitakami Yoru." Gabriel introduced the two. "Nice to meet you, Vignette." Yoru nodded politely. "Nice to meet you, Kitakami-senpai." Vignette had heard the name before. She glanced at him curiously but replied courteously. Still, she figured Gabriel was an angel. She wouldn't make friends with a bad person, so she let it go. Did something happen with Gabriel? Yoru pulled out his key and unlocked his door. "No, I just rushed home and forgot my bag. Vignette brought it over for me." Gabriel laughed awkwardly. She'd hurried home to play games and totally forgot her school bag. Seriously, how do you forget something that big? "Well, see you tomorrow." Vignette waved and turned to leave. "Bye." Gabriel waved back but didn't close the door. Instead, she turned to Yoru. "Kitakami-kun, do you have time this weekend? Could you go shopping with me?" Her big eyes sparkled as she invited him. Yoru had already made plans with Megumi this weekend. But it wasn't like he was going out 2 days in a row, so he agreed. "Is Friday after school okay?" Gabriel added. The game Yoru had lent her was fun, but it didn't have much replay value. She wanted to try an online game. Something popular, like Genshin Impact. Yep, she wanted to play Genshin. "Are you in a hurry, Gabriel? What are you buying?" Yoru asked while changing shoes. "A computer." Gabriel answered immediately. Rather than being in a rush, it was more like she was excited. Yoru shrugged indifferently. After putting on his slippers and closing the door, he walked inside. In the living room, San lay quietly on the couch, pawing at the air. When she heard footsteps, she immediately stood up and stared with her big eyes like she was greeting Yoru home. Yoru plopped onto the couch and let out a long sigh, looking a little tired. He turned on the TV, picked up the cat teaser stick from the table, and stroked San's plump body while waving the toy. Meow. San's eyes sparkled and she was instantly hooked. The teaser stick swished again. Meow meow. San cried out excitedly, waving her little paws trying to catch the toy. Yoru kept playing with her. After a while, San was still full of energy, but Yoru was exhausted. It was getting late. He went to turn on the water heater and headed to the kitchen to prepare dinner. But when he opened the fridge, there weren't many supplies left. Probably not enough for the next few days. This weather's getting gloomy again. Better go shopping now, before the weekend rain forces me to order online. Yoru wasn't well off. He saved wherever he could and never spent recklessly. Except when going out with Megumi. The only unnecessary expense he indulged in was a can of cheap black coffee every lunch. Japan's convenience store culture was among the best. Many working people got all 3 meals from them. Bento boxes from the assembly line weren't that expensive and saved time and money compared to cooking at home. Because cheap bento existed, the need to cook dropped. Which meant fewer grocery stores around. Convenience stores didn't sell produce. Some small supermarkets didn't either. Only medium to large supermarkets carried vegetables and meat. So Yoru had to walk back to the station, ride one stop, and head to the nearest store with groceries. Lucky. Discounts are starting now. Carrying a shopping basket, Yoru noticed store staff putting discount stickers on bentos. He sped up and went to the vegetable section. While on a diet, vegetables, regardless of type, were basically free to eat. Yoru liked onions, lettuce, and potatoes. He grabbed about 2 pounds of each, then tossed in a few unfamiliar greens for variety. The discounted shelf was almost empty. While browsing, he ended up at an empty broccoli display. And ran into Nanami. "Kitakami-kun." Nanami spotted him first and instinctively called out. As soon as she did, she looked at the bulky Yoru standing in front of her, and Sorata's words from lunch echoed in her mind, "He's approaching you with bad intentions. Makes you let your guard down. Brings you food. Then one day, he'll drug you." Originally, Nanami had decided not to overthink it. But those words were like nails hammered into a board. Even after they were pulled out, the marks remained. And her heart was that bored. "You're shopping for discounted veggies too, Aoyama-san?" Yoru glanced at the basket in Aoyama Nanami's hands. It looked like she had come late. She only managed to grab some scraggly bits of broccoli. Nanami nodded absent-mindedly. "The discounted veggies are mostly gone. I've got some here. Want a bit?" Yoru casually offered. "Huh? And no. I'm good, thanks. Nanami's heart tightened. She shook her head quickly, her thoughts tangled. Yoru waved and walked off. After stocking up on daily essentials, he also bought 2 boxes of discounted, clean sushi for dinner. After his bath and dinner, Yoru turned on his desk lamp and began reading the notes Yukino had lent him. They still seemed to carry the scent of a girl. If he put them up for sale, there'd probably be guys willing to pay good money. Yukino had said that if he could keep up with a week-long study plan, he might stand a chance of breaking into the top 30 before the end of term. Time passed quickly, and it was already Friday. Chapter 50, Baking Cookies Friday afternoon. Club activity time. Inside the service club. Yukino held a piece of chalk and stood at the blackboard explaining a math problem. It was content from last semester. For second-year students, this should have been pretty easy. But Yoru still needed Yukino's detailed explanation to more or less understand it. He'd have to review it thoroughly at home to truly grasp it. Yukinon's so strict. Kitakami-kun looks really serious though. Off to the side, Yuagahama didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. She wasn't playing on her phone. Just watching Yukino lecture. Did you understand it? Yukino asked Yoru. Pretty much. I get it. Yoru nodded, sounding confident. Then wait a bit. I'll write 2 problems for you. Come solve them. Yukino turned away and began writing quickly on the board. Tap tap tap. The sound of chalk tapping filled the room. A few minutes later, Yukino signaled Yoru to come up and solve the problems. Taking a deep breath, he grabbed a piece of chalk from the table and carefully studied the questions on the board. His mind raced. He already had a rough idea. Use the method I just taught you. Yukino reminded him calmly. While Yoru was working through the problems, she took a sip of water and glanced at Yuagahama. Yuagahama-san, if you're interested, you could join in too. If I recall, your grades are around the middle of the class, right? I'm good, Yukinon. Yuagahama quickly smiled and waved her hand. After a short while, Yoru confidently returned to his seat. Before he could say anything, Yukino glanced over his answers and already knew the results. Looks like Kitakami-kun's more diligent than I expected. You're not hopeless. A rare compliment from Yukino. Then she added, that's enough for today. Since you're learning well, try this test. Test? Yoru looked puzzled. Yukino pulled out a neatly written A4 sheet from her bag, filled with questions. It was like a custom test paper. Yukinon, you wrote all that by hand? Yuagahama exclaimed. Just answer it. I want to gauge your level. Yukino didn't respond to Yuagahama's remark. Yoru took the handwritten test and examined it carefully. She really went all out. He muttered. The problems covered every subject and matched his current level exactly. The handwriting was neat, the page was clean, and the ink hadn't even dried completely. Start. Time's running out. Yukino urged coolly. Yoru got to work immediately. By the time the club activity period was almost over, he had finished. Yukino graded it on the spot. She had written every question herself, so it was as easy for her as solving 1 + 1. It didn't even take a full minute. Just one look at his answers, and she knew the result. Well, how did I do? Yorui's nervousness rubbed off on Yuagahama beside him. Not bad. Barely passing. Keep it up. Yukino nodded lightly toward him. Phew. Someone in the service club finally let out a sigh of relief. Congrats, Kitakami-kun. Yukinon, can we start now? Yuagahama smiled at her. Yoru looked at them curiously. Was there something going on that he didn't know about? Yukinon is going to teach me how to bake cookies. My mom's birthday is coming up, and I want to give her something special. Wanna join us, Kitakami-kun? It's Friday and we still have time. Well. Yeah, I've got time. Can I? Of course. I wanted another person to help taste them and give feedback. Yuagahama nodded enthusiastically. She had tried once before to bake cookies at home alone, using an online recipe. It was a disaster. She couldn't even mix the dough properly, and the baked result was just a gross, misshapen lump. Hoping the taste might at least be okay, she tried one. And lost her appetite for dinner. After tidying up the clubroom, the 3 of them went to the home ec room. There was one home ec class every week that taught cooking, mending clothes, basic hygiene, etc. Once everything was ready, Yukino began her lesson. They were making simple butter cookies. The ingredients were butter, white sugar, eggs, cake flour, and a bit of salt. Normally, Yoru would never eat high-calorie baked goods like this. But taking one bite to test the flavor wouldn't hurt. A few grams of cookie wouldn't ruin his diet. Trying to make them himself certainly wouldn't make him gain weight. Soften the butter first, then add sugar. Stir, and depending on how moist or firm the dough is, either put it in a piping bag or shape it by hand with a mold. Brush a little oil and egg wash on top, then put them on the tray. In about 5 to 6 minutes, Yukino had a tray lined with over a dozen cookie dough pieces. She hadn't made a lot. Just a little. This wasn't for eating, just for teaching. Wow, you're amazing, Yukinon. Yuagahama said in admiration. Alright, now it's your turn, Yuagahama-san. I'll guide you. Yukino's expression didn't change despite the praise. She'd already put on oven mitts and slid the tray into the oven. So fast. Yuagahama gasped. She hadn't even grasped the steps yet. I'll give it a try too. Yoru picked up a bowl and began. It seemed simple enough. He often looked up recipes and cooked for himself. This was just matching steps. Yukino was also beside him, reminding him of the correct proportions. Seeing Yoru get started, Yuagahama gave Yukino a pleading look, then reluctantly began too. Yoru worked seriously and realized he might actually have a knack for cooking. Maybe he could even become a top chef someday. He mentally replayed Yukino's process. Even though his movements were slower, he managed to prepare the dough, fill the piping bag, and squeeze the batter onto the tray. Chapter 51, Mira wants to take action. You're already done, Kitakami-kun? Yuagahama, who had been scolded by Yukino over and over again, was still stuck on getting the butter-to-flour ratio right. She kept either adding too much butter or using the wrong type of flour. Done. Keep going. Yoru replied calmly. I'm just a clumsy airhead with zero girl power, aren't I? Yuagahama muttered in despair. Yoru put on oven mitts and placed his tray of cookies into the oven. Meanwhile, Yukino flipped her own cookies and began guiding the struggling Yuagahama step by step. Yoru took out his phone and started reading the news. He still had plenty of time before his appointment with Gabriel. Bored, Yoru scrolled through World Cup soccer news as he sat off to the side, quietly waiting. A little while later, Yukino's batch of cookies finished baking. She also helped flip over Yoru's for even heating. Yuagahama finally completed hers too, though the unbaked dough didn't look promising. Maybe it just looks bad. Once it's baked, it might still taste okay. Yuagahama comforted herself as she placed her tray into the oven. Come try them. Yukino called out to the two of them. The moment she pulled the baking tray from the oven, the scent of freshly baked cookies filled the home ec room. If they had to score them, Yukino scored a 100, Yoru a 90, and Yuagahama only managed about 30 points. Smells amazing. Yoru picked up one and, before even tasting, could already smell how good it was. He took a small bite. Not bad. Not too sweet either. Yukino nodded to herself approvingly. So good. Yuagahama called out with a blissful expression. After a while, Yoru's batch was also done. The texture was nearly identical to Yukino's. Just a bit sweeter, and slightly less appealing visually. Not quite pretty, but still acceptable. Everyone tried a piece of each other's. Yoru only had one more bite of his own. Then came the highly anticipated moment. Yuagahama's cookies were done baking. The instant Yukino helped take them out of the oven, Yoru could tell they were a failure. She must have gotten the ingredient ratios wrong. Same oven, same temperature, same baking time. But Yuagahama's cookies came out dry and shriveled, like sponge cake left out for days and dried by the wind. Visibly, the texture was already a disaster. No need to even taste them to know the result. Let's try again next time, Yuagahama-san. Yukino said after glancing at the time. Every Friday, she had to return home for a family dinner. Her sister, Yukino Shitaharuno, would be picking her up soon, and she didn't have much time left. Well, want to at least try how it tastes? Yuagahama sounded a bit down. After all, this was meant to be a gift for her mother. Yukino Shita-san, what should we do with the cookies? Yoru jumped in to shift the topic. If you like them, take them all. If not, toss them. Yukino replied, looking at the two trays. Different cultures handled food waste differently. In Japan, tons of food that had just barely passed its best-by date, still perfectly edible, was routinely thrown away. Every year, several million to tens of millions of tons of food were discarded. Besides, Yukino and Yoru hadn't made that many. Just a bit. Not truly wasteful. If you two don't want them, give them all to me. I'll let Yumeko and the others try. Yuagahama looked enviously at Yukino and Yoru's successful cookies. Then she handed her own cookies over for tasting. Yoru took the first bite. The moment his teeth touched it, he realized. He couldn't even bite through it. It was hard. The texture was like survival rations. Dry, crumbly, and even a bit bitter. Still, he put on a good act, not letting it show. Well, passable, I guess? Yoru answered as he met Yuagahama's expectant gaze. Yukino didn't look convinced. Just seeing the shape of the cookie told her it was a total failure. Still, she carefully parted her lips and took a bite. So hard. So awful. A flicker of discomfort passed across Yukino's face as she forced herself to swallow. Not great. Barely acceptable for a beginner. She commented. It was clear she was trying to spare Yuigahama's feelings. Really? Then I'll try one myself. Encouraged, Yuigahama reached for a cookie. Try it later. Let's clean up the classroom first. Don't stay too late. Yukino interrupted. She felt it was better for Yuigahama to try it alone, so she wouldn't be discouraged in front of Yoru and herself. Then Yukino began assigning cleanup tasks for the room. By the time they finished, it was already 5:30. Considered late. The three of them finally left the club building. Yoru walked at the back, fairly quickly, carrying a few bags of cookies. Yuigahama had forgotten to take hers. Up ahead, Yukino was arm in arm with Yuigahama, chatting as they walked. Just as they stepped out of the club building, a mature-looking woman with shoulder-length hair, who looked about 70% like Yukino, appeared. Yukino, you're finally out. I almost went in to find you. Yukino Shitaharuno stood in front of her little sister, then glanced at Yuigahama. Please don't come into the school without permission, sis. You're not even a Shuchin student. Yukino said helplessly. Hello, Yukino's sister. I'm Yuigahama Yue, a friend of hers. Yuigahama quickly introduced herself. Honestly, just looking at their faces, it was obvious the two were sisters. Yukino has a friend? Haruno was slightly surprised, but also pleased for her sister. Sorry to interrupt you too. Haruno said politely. Oh no, I'm the one who kept Yukine on too long. Yuigahama replied with an awkward smile. After a brief chat, Haruno led Yukino away. Yuigahama headed for the soccer field to find Yumiko. It was Friday, and Hayato would be playing a full soccer match. Yumiko was likely there watching. Yoru had no choice but to speed up and follow her. Yumiko. From a distance, Yuigahama spotted Yumiko, whose striking blonde hair stood out by the field. She called out excitedly and waved. Just then, Yoru arrived, holding the cookies Yuigahama had forgotten. Oh, thank you, Kitakami-kun. I totally forgot. Yuigahama finally realized. No problem. I'll head off now. Yoru shook his head, took a glance toward the soccer field, then left. He was thinking about Megumi. These past few days, she'd been having lunch and chatting with him every noon. The golden treasure chest's progress was going up fast. At this rate, it might open in another 2 weeks. That Kitakami. Why is he with you again? Yumiko frowned deeply. Chapter 52. Remember that name. After handing the cookies to Yuigahama, Yoru left Shuchin's campus. On the way, he pulled out his phone and messaged Gabriel, setting a time and meeting place. He exited the school gate. It was Friday after school, and since the weekend was coming, the commercial street near the school was mostly empty. Much quieter than usual. Students passed through here all the time during the week, so they wouldn't linger after classes ended on a Friday. Walking through the quiet street, Yoru reached the train station at the end, ready to take a ride to meet Gabriel. He queued up and tapped his card to enter. Standing ahead of him was a girl with long silver-gray hair. That's weird. Is my card not working? Sakura Jimami tapped her transit card against the reader again. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. No response. Sensing someone behind her in line, she quickly tried again. Still nothing. The reader didn't react at all to her card. Maybe this gate's broken. Try another one. Yoru said helpfully as he stepped back, noticing her struggling. He switched to the next gate and tapped his own card. Ding. A beep confirmed his successful entry. He walked through the gate past Mai, glancing at her as he passed. Huh? It's her? Silver-gray hair. Looking at her side profile, Yoru recognized her from the time they bumped into each other at the bakery. But he also had the strange feeling that he'd seen her somewhere else before that. Do I know her? Yoru slowed down, frowning as he tried to recall. Mai, noticing him pass through, also switched to the gate he used and tapped her card. Still no response. What the heck? Is my card broken? Mai didn't often use public transit, but she kept her card in good condition. It shouldn't be out of balance either. Besides, the system would only prompt for low balance on exit, not entry. The station wasn't crowded, so she tried another gate. It's really not working. I'll just buy a ticket. She sighed, revealing her delicate, pretty face. Her looks were on par with Yutaha, though her figure wasn't quite as provocative. It's you, huh? Recognizing Yoru, Mai spoke up. His plump figure had left a lasting impression. Yeah, it's me. Besides the bakery. I feel like I've seen you somewhere else. Yoru replied, staying put. Ah, you figured it out? The next second, Mai smiled without surprise and said something that left Yoru confused. Then, before he could even react to her words, Yoru saw Mai pull out a signed photo from her personal backpack and hand it to him. Yoru. What was this about? He hadn't even voiced his confusion yet. Here, take it. My autograph. Mai waved the signed photo. It was a photo of her in costume from a drama. Yoru instinctively took it, glanced at the signature, then looked at Mai, his expression turning odd. Mai assumed he was simply too excited to see her and felt a small wave of satisfaction. Excuse me, but who are you? Yoru suddenly spoke up, shattering her sense of triumph. What? Mai froze. Shocked, annoyed, and slightly embarrassed all at once. You're not even a fan? Sakurajima Mai? Yoru looked at her reaction, glanced at the autograph, and muttered the name written on it. Yes, I'm Sakurajima Mai. She really lived up to her reputation as a childhood actress. Despite the surprise, she quickly regained her composure. Yoru strained to remember. His eyes widened bit by bit. I remember now. I've seen some of your work. So you're a celebrity? Humphrey. Mai gave a little snort. At least she'd regained her dignity. She turned and headed toward the ticket machine. Thanks. Yoru thanked her and mentally noted her name. So she's a celebrity? No wonder she looked familiar. He must have seen her in a drama. Still. Wasn't she kind of washed up? There wasn't much buzz about her at school or online. Not exactly famous. Yoru smiled and carefully put away the autographed photo before heading to the platform. Meanwhile, Mai inserted a bill into the ticket machine. Only for it to be swallowed without giving a ticket. What the? She was stunned. She slapped the machine and pressed all the buttons frantically. This machine couldn't be broken. Someone had just used it right before her. No. No way. She kept pressing the refresh and reset buttons, her expression turning irritated. She tried everything she could think of, but the machine remained unresponsive. Frustrated, Mai turned away, dejected, and went to find a station staff member. This whole month had been a streak of bad luck. Small annoyances kept piling up, leaving her mentally frayed. In a foul mood, she reached the service desk and found a staff member. Hi, the ticket machine swallowed my money. She spoke calmly. No response. Hello? The machine ate my money. She raised her voice, clearly upset now. The staff member continued staring at his screen, didn't even look up. This is your idea of customer service? I'm filing a complaint. Mai stomped lightly on the floor with her shoe to express her anger. Tap tap tap. The staff member kept typing on the keyboard. Mai suddenly doubted her own existence. Was she invisible? Angrily and reluctantly, she reached through the small window and poked the staff member's wrist with her finger. As soon as they made contact, the staff member jumped like he'd seen a ghost. Not again. Seeing his expression, Mai frowned deeply. Meanwhile, it was around 6:30 p.m. Yoru hadn't gone home. Instead, he took a train to a shopping mall in the Harbor District to meet Gabriel. I'm not late, am I, Gabriel? Yoru asked. No, let's grab dinner first, then do a little shopping. Gabriel replied, unhurried. She patted her backpack. Inside was her savings, enough to buy a decent computer. Dinner. Shopping. Buying a PC. By the time they returned to the apartment, it was already past 9 p.m. Yoru turned on the bathroom heater. After dinner, he played with Sansan a little, then began his usual workout. Friday night passed rather pleasantly. The only odd thing was spotting Kaguya, Chika, and a white-haired girl who looked like a middle schooler. Someone Yoru had never seen before. Shopping together. She was quite pretty, though. Chapter 53, Come hang out at my place? Saturday morning. Yoru stood in the shower, washing off all the sweat from his morning cardio. With a splash of body wash and a rinse of water, the sticky, gross feeling was gone. Looking in the mirror, he struck a few poses. It had been almost a month since he started dieting. Progress was still minimal, but he had lost about 15 kilograms. A beginner's weight loss bonus, he figured. It'd only get harder from here. Yoru wasn't just some gluttonous chubby guy. His body constitution made it significantly harder for him to lose weight. Even his dad worked out constantly but stayed pudgy. Looks like it's grown again. These briefs are getting tight. Yoru muttered, thinking about the usual hentai he read. His favorites were ones about fat otaku guys. Guys like him. They'd use their absurd bodies to conquer high-class, snobbish, beautiful girls who secretly looked down on fat nerds. After a few rounds, the girls would become obsessed with them. It was unrealistic, sure. But it felt good to read. Once clean, Yoru dried himself off, got dressed, and walked out of the bathroom. Living room. Gabriel lay on the couch with her new laptop, barefoot, her pale feet dangling over the armrest. When she saw Yoru, she waved him over. On the table were Yoru's game console and cartridges. Gabriel had already played through them all. What should I download first? Gabriel scooted over to make room. Account setup's done. Install an antivirus first. The default browser isn't great. Replace that. Then get a VPN accelerator. Yoru didn't sit down. Instead, he squatted beside her. The couch was small. If he sat, he'd be pressed up against Gabriel. People said foreigners were more open, and cheek kisses were just casual greetings. It really was true. Yoru reached over to help her operate the computer, downloading everything one by one. Looking at her bright eyes as she lay on the couch, Yoru smiled a little. All right. Now we just wait for the downloads. He got up, picked up his game console and cartridges, and put them away in his room. Ah. So excited. Gabriel rolled on the couch, a far cry from the composed girl she was when they first met. Soon, Yoru came back out after putting everything away. Gabriel, can you tell if I've lost a bit of weight? Yoru asked. You have. She didn't even look up. She'd already noticed. The change was small, but visible. She saw him every day at school, after all. Yoru smiled happily, then helped Gabriel finish installing the basic software and started downloading games. I wanna play Genshin. Gabriel couldn't wait. She clicked download like her life depended on it. Genshin Impact had become wildly popular in Japan lately. A cultural phenomenon. At school, the boys talked about it non-stop. Gabriel had heard enough to make her ears numb. She couldn't hold back anymore. Genshin will take a while to download. I'm heading out to buy some stuff. You coming, Gabriel? Yoru shrugged. He needed to buy some cat supplies. Later. Gabriel kept her eyes glued to the screen, waving goodbye as she kicked her legs in the air. Yoru tried not to stare at his friend's unintentionally exposed soles. Before leaving, he petted San, who lay by the entrance. The couch was completely claimed by Gabriel. It was about 10 in the morning. Yoru headed to the pet clinic where he'd once met Yukino. She wasn't there this time. Yoru casually asked the lady at the counter and found out that Yukino only came to work here during long holidays. After buying some supplies to help with cat fur maintenance and digestion, he stopped by a nearby convenience store. He picked up lunch. Just a clean box of sushi, a few bottles of coffee, and some sugar-free juice. Then walked home. It was Saturday. The residential area finally had a bit of life. People could be seen walking around, cars passing by. Kua. Dragging his heavy body, Yoru felt a bit tired, so he took a break in a small neighborhood park. Calling it a park was generous. It was about the size of a classroom, with a children's slide and a few workout machines. Clack. He took a sip of coffee while scrolling through the news. The World Cup was still trending. Even though Japan had been knocked out, the hype hadn't died down. The checkered team that beat the Blue Samurai also took down Samba, highlighting just how strong the Japanese team had been. Even Portugal had been eliminated in an upset. Looks like the title's going to Mbappe again. Taking a familiar gulp of black coffee, Yoru stretched and happened to spot someone biking past. The more he looked, the more she resembled Nanami. Maybe I'm just seeing things. Yoru didn't think much of it. He finished half his coffee and got up to head home. Just as he neared his apartment, Nanami rode her bike straight toward him, glancing around as if searching for something. Yoru noticed her, but she didn't seem to recognize him until they were nearly face to face. Kitakami-kun? Nanami called out with surprise, stopping her bike. I remember you live around here, right? Yeah, what a coincidence. Are you looking for something? Yoru nodded slightly. Do you know where this place is? Nanami looked relieved as she walked her bike over to him and pulled out her phone. It was a pretty standard smartphone. Not the latest model. Seems like she's not very well off, Yoru thought. At Shuchin Academy, most students used iPhones. She unlocked the screen and showed it to him. This is the place. I've been trying to find it forever. Nanami smiled a little awkwardly while studying Yoru's face. This is my apartment building. Yoru said, surprised at first, then quickly understanding. Of course, the rent had dropped noticeably. It was natural more people would want to move in. The only issue was that the landlady's handwritten directions were vague and hard to follow. Huh? Seriously? Nanami was visibly surprised. If you're heading there, follow me. Yoru tilted his head toward the direction. Nanami immediately started walking her bike and followed behind. She was looking to rent a new place, and this building was the only one that matched her needs. Close to school, cheap, and quiet. Kitakami-kun, how's this apartment overall? Nanami asked from behind. Not bad. It's pretty new, cheap, not many tenants. There are still open units. Yoru recalled. The first floor had parking and mailboxes. He and Gabriel lived alone on the second floor. The third and fourth floors only had a couple of residents, whom he'd run into once. Nanami looked visibly relieved, her expression lightening with anticipation. Soon, they reached Yoru's apartment complex. Nanami looked at the building entrance and remembered how Yoru had helped her that day. She also recalled what Sorata had told her. "I can help you get in touch with the landlady. Wanna come up to my place and wait?" Yoru casually offered outside the building. Gabriel was at home, so there was nothing strange about it. Eh? Nanami froze for a second, caught up in her own spiraling thoughts. What if he's targeting you? Maybe he's trying to get close, help you out, bring you food so you get used to him. And then drug you. He's a thief. A disgusting fat creep. Aoyama-san, stay away from him. He's dangerous. Sorata's warning replayed in her mind, word for word. She couldn't stop herself from falling back into worry and doubt. But if she did go up now and saw Gabriel, she'd realize she was just overthinking and would definitely feel guilty afterward. With her personality, that guilt would likely last for a while. Chapter 54, What Am I Even Thinking? Yoru had only made the offer casually and didn't think much of it. But it completely threw Nanami into emotional chaos. She was torn and hesitant, unsure if she should trust him. "Oh, by the way, do you need help moving your stuff?" Yoru suddenly turned around at the second floor to ask. "Huh? Moving?" Nanami nearly lost her balance and almost bumped into him. Come to think of it, when they met at the supermarket that day, Yoru was really kind. When she missed out on the discounted vegetables, he offered her some of his. Then he invited her over, helped her contact the landlord, and now even offered to help her move? Originally, Nanami hadn't thought anything of it, but Sorata's words had planted a seed of doubt. Was Yoru really being genuine? She hesitated, murmuring internally, not sure how to respond. Should she turn him down? "Actually, I do have a small request." Yoru noticed her silence and assumed she was taking his words seriously. He continued on his own. "A request? It's not what you think." Nanami's eyes widened. She took a step back, her ponytail swaying. "The landlady's an elderly lady. If I help her find tenants, she gives me a small discount on utilities, so..." Seeing her reaction, Yoru scratched his head and explained. He wasn't well off. Everything was covered by his family. So he tried to save where he could. Once he slimmed down more, he planned to work during the summer break. "Oh. I see. That's totally fine. If it helps you, I'm glad to do it. You don't need to help me move, though." Nanami gave a slightly awkward smile. "Alright then. I'll go contact the landlady. You can wait here, or rest at my place." Yoru nodded and headed back inside. He left the door ajar, open just enough to peek through. Nanami stayed at the stairwell landing between the second and third floors, leaning on the railing and gazing at the surroundings. "I'm back," Yoru said as he changed into his slippers by the entrance. San wasn't there. "Back already?" Gabriel perked up in the living room. "How's it going?" Yoru walked over and saw the game still installing. He placed the bag on the table, pulled out a bottle of juice, and handed it to Gabriel. "Thanks." Gabriel took the juice and kept her eyes on Yoru, who was helping with the laptop. Soon, everything was set up. Gabriel hugged her laptop, excited, and lay on the couch, ready to play Genshin Impact. Yoru then contacted the elderly landlady who lived nearby and headed to the kitchen. Outside, Nanami leaned on the railing, her legs starting to feel sore. She kept replaying Sorata's warning and Yoru's actions in her mind. Kitakami-kun doesn't seem like a bad person. She couldn't help but keep glancing at his apartment. Maybe I should go check? Just to scout out the apartment layout in advance. Using that excuse, she convinced herself and cautiously approached the door. It was slightly ajar. She placed her hand on the wall and peeked inside. Then she bit her lip, pushed the door open, and stepped in. She quietly removed her sneakers, her cute little feet in white socks pressing onto the clean wooden floor. At the same time, Nanami carefully examined the layout of the entryway, feeling a little nervous as she slowly stepped inside. This is my first time entering a boy's home. Her heart was pounding, but soon she got drawn in by the apartment's interior and focused on her original purpose. After passing through the short entryway, Nanami reached the living room and started to inspect everything seriously. It was a studio apartment, suitable for a single person. Not very big. Just one glance, and she already had a general grasp. Living room, bedroom, shower room. Nanami muttered to herself as she walked further in. Gabriel, who was on the sofa logging into her game, sensed someone coming in and turned around in surprise. Their eyes met. "Huh? There's someone here?" Nanami instinctively cried out in surprise when she saw Gabriel, lying on the couch with striking golden hair and clear eyes. She hadn't expected there to be anyone else in Yoru's place. In the kitchen, Yoru, who was used to talking to himself while preparing Sansan's cat food, heard the noise and peeked out. He casually greeted Nanami and told her to sit anywhere she liked. "Hello, I'm Tenma Gabriel White." Gabriel greeted politely. Nanami blinked in surprise before replying and walked up to Gabriel. "Hi, I'm Nanami Aoyama." While responding politely, Nanami examined Gabriel. Natural, dazzling golden hair. A cute face. An outstanding aura. Nanami couldn't help but feel a little down on herself. Such a cute foreign girl, and she was in Yoru's apartment? "Have a seat. There's juice in the bag on the table," Gabriel said, picking up her laptop and helping host the guest since Yoru was busy. "Oh, thank you. Can I ask what your relationship is with Kitakami-kun?" Nanami nodded, but her curiosity about Gabriel's identity was growing. Wasn't this supposed to be Yoru's place? They seemed awfully close. "I live next door. We're neighbors and friends," Gabriel said calmly. Sitting cross-legged on the sofa in loose-fitting clothes, her pale thighs were largely exposed. If she stood up, you might just get a full view of those soft curves. "So, you and Kitakami-kun are pretty close." Nanami's face immediately turned a little grim. "Huh?" Gabriel focused on her game. Sigh. Nanami quietly sighed to herself. Just earlier, she had been suspicious of Yoru. Maybe he really was like Sorata had said, trying to get close to her with ulterior motives. Now, thinking back on that suspicion made her feel both guilty and uneasy. "Gabriel-san is way cuter than me. And she's a foreigner too. I'm just plain and ordinary. Even if Kitakami-kun had some bad intentions. Not that he does. With Gabriel around, he wouldn't even look at me, right? And yet I suspected him like that. I'm really..." If Gabriel weren't there right now, Nanami might have been on the verge of covering her face and repenting. She shouldn't have doubted Yoru. He had helped her all along. Only now did Nanami realize how ridiculous her thoughts had been. Also, Gabriel is seriously adorable. Feeling plain in comparison, Nanami suddenly lost her confidence. A while later, Yoru came out after preparing the cat food and greeted them. He didn't notice Nanami's odd behavior at all. As a voice actor, even though she was still studying and preparing for exams, she had to be skilled at maintaining composure. Controlling expressions and staying calm was the bare minimum requirement. In the end, Yoru showed Nanami around the apartment. She was very satisfied. The landlady soon arrived, and Nanami signed the contract on the spot. However, she didn't choose to live on the second floor. She opted for the top floor, the fourth. Chapter 55, Blessing in Disguise. Monday. "Thanks a lot, Kato-san." Yoru, in a good mood, walked to the station with Gabriel while replying to Megami's message. On Saturday, he had helped Nanami get in touch with the landlady. On Sunday, he went out with Megami for most of the day, and his mood had been lifted. His thoughts were all over the place, so he hadn't noticed that Gabriel seemed a little off today. She looked tired. Normally so mindful of her appearance, Gabriel's hair wasn't even brushed properly. The ends were split, and a few strands stuck up at the crown. She looked completely distracted. They arrived at the station, took the train, and got off at the terminal station near the shopping district. Kitakami-kun, wait a second. I want to buy some bread." Gabriel yawned while trying to hold it back. "You didn't eat breakfast?" Yoru asked as he nodded. "No. Sleep deprived," Gabriel answered in a tiny voice. They reached a bakery soon after, and Yoru waited outside. Gabriel didn't dawdle. She picked out a few breads she liked, paid, and stepped out. "Isn't that the angel from Glass? Gabriel, right?" At one of the bakery counters, a red-haired girl with twin loops tied at the back of her head and wearing the Shuchin Academy uniform watched from the shadows. "Satania." After Gabriel left, Satania picked up a pineapple bun and went to pay at the register. "Poor little angel. Now that you've run into me, Satania. The greatest demon of all." After buying the pineapple bun she thought looked tasty, Satania quickly chased after Gabriel. But Gabriel was already gone. Frustrated, Satania stomped her foot, tore open the bun, and took a big bite. After parting with Gabriel, Yoru entered the classroom just in time for the morning session. Through the back door, as usual. His deskmate, Yumiko's little clique had just dispersed. He finally showed up. The moment Yoru walked in, Yumiko secretly locked her eyes on him. When she saw him drop his bag, pull out his phone, and start browsing news like always, she got annoyed. Hadn't she warned him to stay away from Yui? Was he completely ignoring what she'd said? There's no way Yui was the one approaching Yoru, right? Even just using her toes to think, Yumiko knew. One was a shy, soft-spoken best friend who bottled everything up and got taken advantage of easily. The other was a notorious fat slob. What's wrong? Yoru, finally sensing the gaze, turned his head and locked eyes with her. Today, Yumiko was wearing a subtle layer of makeup. Her lips were a deep red, and her brows had been drawn sharply. She looked more queenly than ever. Yumiko didn't answer. She just shot Yoru a death glare, her eyes saying, "Don't even think of leaving after school." Yoru felt a chill down his spine. Something was definitely off, and he got nervous. Tap tap tap. Yumiko turned around, picked up her phone, and sent a message to Ebina. She asked Ebina to distract Uegahama after school, since today you and Yoru were on cleaning duty together. Still confused by her reaction, Yoru took a deep breath and went back to reading the news. The World Cup was still dominating the headlines. The internet was flooded with people demanding that the African teams be sent home. White flag Africa. Others mourned the final matches of legends like Modric and Messi. Yoru kept scrolling. A local gang conflict in the Tokyo area caught his attention. After all, it happened nearby. In Japan, the Yakuza weren't exactly legal. They simply operated under the radar of the law. The infamous Yamaguchi-gumi had their headquarters in Kobe, Kansai. Not in Tokyo. Tokyo belonged to the Sumet Yoshikai. The two factions were like Hitler and the Jews. Completely incompatible. This time, the conflict involved two violent gangs under the umbrella of the Sumet Yoshikai. On the surface, it didn't affect ordinary people, so Yoru just treated it as a news story. At noon, he chatted with Megumi like usual. But the weather was strange in this new place. It suddenly turned gloomy again. Until school ended in the afternoon, Yumiko still hadn't made any moves, so Yoru simply forgot about it. After school, 4 people were on cleaning duty. Yoru and his 3 classmates sitting in front of him. Uegahama happened to be one of them. "Hey, Hina." As soon as school ended, Yumiko found Ebina. Hayato and the other boys had already headed to their clubs. At this point, Yoru still had no idea he was walking straight into trouble. Of course, it could also be a blessing in disguise. The 4 of them began cleaning the classroom. Gradually, the building emptied out. As their cleaning duties were wrapping up, Ebina entered from the back door and took Uegahama away. Yoru and the 2 remaining boys put away the chairs and left the classroom, heading to the service club. Downstairs, Yumiko had already changed out of her indoor shoes and was wearing brown loafers, arms crossed with a bored expression. A moment later, Yoru came out, having changed his shoes, and closed his locker door. One that had been scribbled all over with insults in marker. "Hey, Kitakami. Hold up." Yumiko had been waiting for a while and directly called out to him. Thump. Yoru's heart skipped a beat. He instinctively sensed trouble and turned his head stiffly. He saw the beautiful Yumiko narrowing her long eyes, striding toward him with her long, shapely legs. He had to admit, among the girls, Yumiko was definitely one of the taller ones. Do you need something?" Yoru was a little nervous. As far as he could tell, the only time he might have upset her was during that swimming class. "Come with me. I have something to ask you." The proud blonde gal used a commanding tone, her expression slightly threatening, signaling the otaku to follow. This script felt off. Shouldn't this be turning in the opposite direction? Yoru swallowed nervously, clenched his teeth, and followed anxiously behind Yumiko. His chest full of nerves and questions, he stared at her slender back, dazzling golden hair, and long legs wrapped in black knee-high socks. Her pale, flawless legs moved right in front of his eyes. "Where are you taking me?" It had been a while since school ended. Shuchen Academy was already big, and now there were even fewer people around. Yumiko led him to a secluded area behind the school building. There were flower beds and large trees here. Quiet and hidden. And even a long disused pond. Someone had once fallen in here before. Could she be planning to prank him? Yoru wondered uneasily. "Keep up. Why are you staying so far behind?" Yumiko turned back, her tone unfriendly. "Ah, right." Startled, Yoru quickened his pace and walked up behind her. Yumiko seemed to want to go even deeper, taking another big step forward. But her focus was entirely on Yoru and not on her footing. She stepped on the uneven stone path, stumbled, and fell face first to the ground. She barely managed to catch herself with her elbows. In a hilariously awkward position, she knelt on the ground with her back to Yoru. Shuchen's uniform was a skirt. With this fall, Yoru froze in place, stunned by the sight before him. Yumiko was kneeling with her elbows and knees propped against the ground, her skirt flipped up and resting on her back. Even part of her pale back was exposed. Never mind anything else. What's more, Yoru was looking down from above. Pink. He snapped out of it, hurriedly covering his mouth, but his eyes didn't move away. It was just instinct. Ah. Yumiko didn't even register the pain in her body. Or maybe she couldn't. She let out a sharp scream and shot up from the ground. She spun around, Her pretty face and ears flushed pink with embarrassment, and glared daggers at Yoru. You saw everything, didn't you? She fumbled to straighten her skirt while speaking. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. Sure, you could see girls dressed more provocatively at the beach. But this wasn't the beach. It was school. It was Yoru's first time experiencing something like this. He fumbled for words in a panic. So the cold, dominant queen of school could show this side too, huh? You jerk. I'll kill you. If you dare tell anyone, you're dead. Embarrassed and furious, Yumiko gave him a death glare and warned him fiercely. Then, overwhelmed by shame and anger, she pressed her hands against her skirt and bolted away from him. She regretted it so much. Of all days, today was the one time she didn't wear safety shorts. After Yumiko ran off, Yoru pursed his trembling lips and finally left the area. He still had no idea why she had called him out here in the first place. Maybe it would have been nothing. But now, he was probably doomed. After calming down for quite a while, Yoru finally arrived late. Standing outside the service club room, he listened to the conversation inside between Uegahama and Yukino before knocking on the door. I thought you weren't coming. Yukino said flatly. Something came up. Yoru felt no excitement from having seen one of the school's top beauties' panties and smooth back. Instead, he was full of dread. Chapter 56, Don't look at me with those gross virgin eyes. Ever since he'd accidentally seen Yumiko's pink panties, Yoru had been living in constant fear. 2 days passed without any sign of Yumiko retaliating or acting out. This made Yoru feel like something terrible was brewing. That noon, Yoru was chatting casually with Megumi. The progress bar above her head, shaped like a golden treasure chest, was more than halfway full. Yoru saw it but didn't feel much joy. Instead, a faint gloom lingered on his face. Yoru-kun, you don't seem very happy lately. Megumi tilted her head slightly. It's nothing. Just a bit on edge. Yoru sighed. Is it still about being mistaken for the culprit? Megumi guessed. She also knew Yoru had to rank in the top 30 for total grades this school year to avoid expulsion. Pretty much. I just wish they'd catch the real culprit already. Yoru nodded. Thinking about the criminal still on the loose, he clenched his fists tightly. Do you have any leads? Megumi asked curiously. At that, Yoru thought of Ariri, who always looked down on him with that smug expression. He opened his mouth, then gave a dry laugh and shook his head, saying nothing. Megumi sighed regretfully. Lunch break was nearly over. Yoru and Megumi returned to the classroom to get ready for class. Passing by his beautiful deskmate Yumiko, Yoru sneaked a few glances at her before sitting down. Nothing happened until school ended. Yoru quickly packed his bag and headed for the library. According to Yukino's tutoring plan, he needed to borrow a few reference books. Shuchin Academy's library was incredibly grand and classical. If you didn't know it was a library, you might think it was a small palace. Second floor, right? The library was a hot spot for students, so Yoru tried to avoid others and made his way to the second floor. Yukino hadn't specified where exactly the books were. Just that they were somewhere in the library. As for why he went to the second floor, each floor's collection was organized differently. The first floor was for quiet study, borrowing books, and held mostly manga, light novels, and entertainment magazines. Above the second floor was where the real books were kept. Yoru spent over 10 minutes looking before finally finding all the books Yukino had requested. He carried the stack in his arms. He headed downstairs to the borrowing desk. Hello, I'd like to borrow these. The library was staffed by students. As Yoru approached, he felt uncomfortable under the boy's strange gaze. Once the checkout was complete and Yoru turned to leave, he suddenly saw Kasumijoka Utaha standing right behind him. He flinched. Utaha was staring at Yoru, arms crossed, her deep wine-colored eyes silently observing him. The stalker incident she'd experienced hadn't been resolved. After reporting it to the police, the stalker had toned it down for a while, but lately, he was getting bolder again. With someone watching her from the shadows, Utaha wanted to catch the person. Yet she was terrified. Only after Yoru had walked off did she turn her gaze away. I want to check the borrowing records. Is that okay? She asked the librarian. The librarian, a male student, was flustered. With the school's untouchable beauty making a request, he instantly became eager to please. Utaha's recently published volume had underperformed. By coincidence, the Shuchin library had a copy of her light novel. She wanted to see the borrowing stats and feedback. Yoru finished borrowing the books and headed straight to the service club. Got them all. He returned, placing the stack on the long table. Kitakami-kun, try the cookies I baked yesterday? Don't worry, I tested them a few times. They're not that bad this time. Uegahama pushed a small cookie bag toward him. Alright then, I'll give them a shot. Yoru glanced at the two girls in the room, picked up a cookie, and took a bite. The taste wasn't as bad as he imagined. Decent enough. Not bad. Yoru commented honestly. Let's take a break, then continue. Yukino said, closing her book. Yoru nodded earnestly. He didn't even know how to properly thank Yukino. About an hour passed. The service club meeting ended. Yoru walked home alone with his bag in hand. Wonder how much I've actually improved. Feeling the weight of the books, Yoru left Shuchin and headed toward the train station. On the way, he was stopped by Yumiko, who stood with a look that said she'd been waiting. Me. Mira-san. Yoru swallowed hard, staring at her. Crap. She's here to cause trouble. Among students, Yumiko held pretty high status. Near the top of the social food chain. She acted domineering and strong. Yoru had heard that many boys liked her, but none dared approach, just watched from afar. Finally caught you. Come with me. She pointed to a quiet alley nearby. Today, she was wearing safety shorts. Sorry. I really didn't mean to. Yoru nervously shook his head, already apologizing. I just want to talk. What, you don't want to? Yumiko spoke in a commanding tone, glaring at him. You fell on your own. Yoru mumbled under his breath, clearly unwilling. Me? Hey, don't look at me with those gross virgin eyes, it's disgusting. Ugh. You're still looking? Can you not? Yumiko looked like a cat about to explode, her face showing both disgust and anger. Was this guy dense? She had already warned him to stay away from you, and he still didn't listen. Yoru lowered his head and clenched his fists in anger. It's not like he chose to see her underwear. It wasn't his fault she fell. I said come with me. Yumiko turned sharply and growled. Their thoughts were completely misaligned. Yumiko just wanted to warn Yoru. The disgusting fat nerd. To stay away from you. Yoru, on the other hand, thought she was here for revenge over the accidental peek. He knew he couldn't run forever. After a brief hesitation, Yoru followed Yumiko into a quiet alley behind the shopping district. Chapter 57, Don't Rush. Yumiko led Yoru into a deserted alley in the commercial area. It wasn't a long alley. Both ends were visible at a glance. Yumiko wasn't concerned about safety. Thanks to her background, she'd been well protected growing up. And that had also shaped her into someone strong-willed and domineering. Alright? What? What do you want? Yoru thought a group of people might be waiting to jump him. But it was just Yumiko, alone. I told you, I just want to talk. Yumiko said while twirling a strand of her golden hair. But that wasn't my fault. Yoru naturally assumed Yumiko was here to pick a fight over what happened Monday. He had no idea she just wanted to have a conversation. You still dare say it's not your fault? Didn't I warn you before? Yumiko frowned, a metaphorical trio of black lines forming on her forehead. I didn't do anything wrong. You were the one being extra. Yoru gritted his teeth and muttered a defense. What? Yumiko looked a little surprised by his reaction. Wasn't this guy usually meek and spineless? I said it was your own fault. Yoru took a deep breath and looked straight at the beautiful Jaiaru before him. It's your problem. Huh? Hey. Yumiko suddenly let out a dry laugh, glancing around. The next second, she strode forward with her long legs and grabbed Yoru by the collar, lifting him slightly. What's that got to do with me? Her wine red eyes narrowed threateningly as she questioned him. Yoru froze. He, a fat otaku, was now pinned against a wall in a dark alley by a stunning blonde Jaiaru gripping his collar. Yumiko, seeing he wouldn't respond, tugged his collar harder, making him uncomfortable. At the same time, she leaned in, glaring at his chubby face. Let go of me. Yoru finally reacted, trying to swat away her hand. But he failed. And she pushed him backward against the wall. You disgusting slob, still dare act tough? Irritated by his resistance, Yumiko snarled and kicked at his shin with her loafer-clad foot. Yoru instinctively tried to dodge. If I tell the school you looked at me with a pervy stare and tried something indecent, think you'd get expelled? Yumiko leaned in close, her breath cold as she spat the words in his face, her eyes full of revulsion. Clunk. Yoru's body and mind froze at once, like someone had turned off the water valve. Yumiko's kick landed on his shin. But being a girl, she didn't have much strength, and his leg was fleshy. It didn't hurt. Felt more like a light bump. After speaking, Yumiko let go of his collar, clapped her hands, and was about to give him a stern warning. To stay away from you. That's all she really wanted. As for the embarrassing incident where she tripped and flashed her panties and butt, she had long since accepted that as bad luck. But she really shouldn't have threatened Yoru with expulsion. Lately, Yoru had been in a bad mood, always on edge. Mira Yumiko. Yoru's reaction was not what Yumiko expected. His eyes were bloodshot, burning red with fury. He was trying his best to hold it in, but still squeezed her name out through clenched teeth. Yumiko immediately sensed something was off. Yoru looked like he'd snapped. Fear surged through her as she instinctively tried to step back. But a pair of chubby hands lunged toward her wrist. Caught off guard, her fair wrist was seized tightly by Yoru's grip. "You! What are you?" Before she could even finish, a surge of strength clamped down on her arm. With a light push from Yoru, Yumiko couldn't keep her balance and stumbled backward. Her back slammed into the rough wall, and her arm was pinned above her head by Yoru's reversed grip. "I've never done anything to you. So why are you bullying me for no reason? Threatening me? Trying to get me expelled?" Yoru looked like a man possessed, yelling at Yumiko with wild anger. His face twisted in fury. Yumiko was completely stunned, her face pale as fear and confusion took over. She never imagined things would escalate like this. "Why, you are disgusting. Let go of me, you bastard." She struggled with all her strength, trying to free her wrist. Her legs kicked wildly beneath her. "You think I'm just some fat loser who's easy to pick on?" Yoru snapped again, though he tried to calm the rage boiling inside. He was afraid that if he lost control, he'd do something truly reckless. Yumiko kicked so hard she flung her shoes off. But she still couldn't break free. Just as she was about to scream for help, Yoru finally let go of her wrist with a cold glare and stepped back, adjusting his collar. Cough cough. Yumiko's face turned red from shock and relief as she coughed repeatedly. "Since the beginning of the semester, you've been warning me. But I've never once provoked you, have I? You fell on your own. Your underwear showed, and I just happened to see it. That's not my fault, right? I even apologized." Yoru stepped back another 2 paces, still fuming as he glared at Yumiko. This unexpected rebellion from him was completely outside her expectations. Cough cough. "Then. What about Yua?" Yumiko coughed as she leaned against the wall, still flustered and anxious. "Yuagahama? What about her?" Yoru froze in confusion. "You and Yua. You're way too close, aren't you?" Yumiko shot back, trying to steady herself. "I may have accidentally seen your underwear. And I apologized. But Yuagahama and I are in the same club. What are you trying to say?" Yoru still thought all this was about the Monday incident. Even now, he couldn't tell what the real issue was. Partly because Yumiko had never been direct. Of course, asking a top of the food chain blonde Jaiaru to clearly explain herself to a gross loser like him? That wasn't likely. Huh? Yumiko blinked in surprise. "You and Yoru were in the same club?" She hadn't expected that at all. If she remembered correctly, Yua's club was founded by Yukino Shita Yukino. How could a chubby nerd like Yoru have joined a club created by the school's Queen of Ice? "So? Are you still going to threaten me?" Yoru began to calm down, thinking maybe he'd lost his temper too easily. But he didn't regret what he just did. Chapter 58, A Strange Kind of Satisfaction. "So? Are you still going to threaten me?" "And no. I won't." Yumiko leaned against the wall, chilled and trembling as she stammered. She had never truly intended to get Yoru expelled. His situation had nothing to do with her. She didn't even want anything to do with him. From the beginning, all she wanted was for him to stay away from Yua. "I can't believe they're in the same club," Yumiko muttered to herself, finally realizing it was all a misunderstanding. "Really?" Yoru squinted, his eyes nearly reduced to slits from his chubby cheeks. He scanned Yumiko skeptically. Really?" Yumiko nodded frantically. Yoru had seriously scared her. "And you're not going to come after me again?" Yoru stared hard at the gorgeous blonde in front of him. He realized something. He was the one in control now. This proud, pretty Jaiaru looked almost meek in front of him. It felt weirdly satisfying. "I swear I won't. Let's just call it even, okay? But you'd better not tell anyone about what you saw." Yumiko's voice was tinged with panic. "Then apologize," Yoru said coldly. "What?" Yumiko froze, unable to believe what she'd just heard. Her whole life, she had been pampered and protected because of her family. Apologizing to Yoru? She couldn't even say it out loud. Even though she now realized she was in the wrong. At most, she only felt a little guilty. Besides, he'd seen everything. "If you don't apologize." Yoru lowered his voice, sounding composed and serious. But inside, his heart was pounding out of his chest, and his fingers trembled uncontrollably. "You're threatening me? You wouldn't dare." For the first time in her life, Yumiko was being threatened. And the one doing it was a guy she thought was an easy target. A gross loser. But the next second, she caved. She was afraid Yoru would really do something crazy. In a deserted alleyway, a beautiful blonde Jaiaru apologized to a reviled fat nerd. If anyone ever found out, they'd scoff. No one would believe it. Huff. So this is what it feels like. Yoru felt conflicted, but also strangely pleased. That strange sensation was intoxicating. If I could do the same to Kasamijoka Utaha, or Shinomiya Kaguya, or that annoying tsundere Sawamura. Yoru recalled pinning Yumiko against a wall, her golden hair shimmering as she struggled helplessly beneath his grip. Their size difference made her completely unable to resist. Her face full of panic and fear. What if it were petite little Ariri instead? Maybe he could force her into a doja, sticking her butt up, apologizing with a few barking sounds. Meanwhile, Yumiko, now a little calmer, cast complicated glances at Yoru as she quietly picked up her small leather shoes. During the struggle, she kicked them off. Her socks had gotten twisted. So she sat down, pulled off her black mid-length cotton socks, revealing her flawless pale feet. She rolled the socks up neatly and put them back on, then slipped into her shoes. Yoru shook his head hard, trying to dispel the thoughts. He cast one last glance at Yumiko, then turned and walked out of the alley. Only after his figure disappeared from the alleyway did Yumiko slowly get up from the ground, her expression filled with lingering fear. At the bookstore in the shopping district. The one that had the genshin standee out front. Nanami was working, wearing her staff uniform, diligently carrying out her duties. Now that she'd moved, it made sense to find a new job closer to home. Long commutes weren't practical. It was almost time to close, but Nanami was still carefully helping a customer find the right manga. She didn't actually read manga herself, but she knew the store's sales trends and what kinds of stories different customers preferred. How about this one? It fits what you described, Kanda-kun. Nanami offered a recommendation to the customer, Kanda Sorata. Ah. Okay, I'll take a look. Sorata stood awkwardly, keeping a respectful distance from her. He didn't really care about manga. He had only come over after noticing Nanami worked here. Hoping to chat a bit. He was even thinking of asking her out this weekend. He realized he liked her more and more. Sorata flipped the manga closed absent-mindedly and opened his mouth to speak to the girl in front of him. She probably doesn't have a boyfriend. Right? He wondered silently. Don't like it? Then I'll change the book. Aoyama Nanami said earnestly as she finished her task. After she spoke, Sorata hesitated, too nervous to speak. Nanami's phone rang. Sorry, Kanda-kun. She quickly apologized and pulled her phone from her uniform, turning off the alarm. She was moving today, and Gabriel and Yoru were going to help her. It was already the end of her shift. Do you need anything? Sorata's sudden impulse faded. Yeah, I'm off work now. Nanami smiled apologetically. Then I'll take this one. Sorry for the trouble. Sorata said awkwardly. After paying, Nanami changed out of her work clothes and left the shopping district for the station. She didn't even say goodbye to Sorata. Sorata, caught in indecision, finally made up his mind to chase after her and speak his heart. He was in the soccer club, had participated in junior high tournaments, and did pretty well, which helped him get into Shuchen. I don't look bad either, Aoyama-san should like me, right? Soccer's hot lately, and some girls even asked for my contact info. While fantasizing, Sorata quickened his pace and chased after her. At the station. Sorry I'm late, Kitakami-kun. Nanami said with an apologetic smile. I just got here. Yoru shook his head. He had just come out of a nearby alley, still feeling a bit stirred inside. Thank you so much for helping me move. Nanami smiled. You're saving me on water and electricity bills too. Yoru replied casually as they walked into the station together. Aoyama-san, why are you walking with that disgusting fat loser again? Sorata, who arrived late, saw this and felt a wave of discomfort and pain. It was a feeling he couldn't quite describe. The girl he liked was with a disgusting fat loser. He took a while to calm down and consoled himself. Even if Nanami didn't like him, there's no way she'd fall for someone like that, right? Chapter 59, We're friends at Nanami's new place. Thank you, Kitakami-kun. I'll pay you back for the cab fare. Nanami and Yoru came out of an old apartment building, each carrying a huge cardboard box filled with items she had packed in advance. As for Gabriel, she was too small to be of much help, so she stayed back in the apartment. Isn't that heavy? Yoru, walking behind, asked casually. Not really, I guess I've trained up a bit. Nanami laughed. Oh? And what's this black equipment? Yoru tried to keep the conversation going. It was getting dull. That's my voice acting practice gear. It helps correct my pitch. She explained. Voice acting? Yoru showed some curiosity. I'm trying to get certified. I'm still in voice acting school. She replied. Must be tough, coming all the way from Kansai. Yoru commented offhandedly. Huh? Nanami stopped, surprised, her expression shy and awkward. Is my accent that strong? She asked, clearly self-conscious. It's okay, just a bit. Yoru held up his fingers, making a gesture that would piss off a Korean man. Phew. She let out a sigh of relief. After bringing the boxes back to the apartment, they went up to the 4th floor where Gabriel was sorting things inside. She quickly finished, then grabbed her laptop and started gaming. Nanami and Yoru left for a second round of moving. By the time they finished, it was dark. Thank you, Kitakami-kun. Nanami expressed sincere gratitude. She had received so much help. She even felt guilty for having once doubted him. She wanted to make it up to him. But Yoru didn't seem to need anything from her. I'm heading out. Yoru waved and left the 4th floor. He hadn't understood why she chose to live on the 4th floor. Now he knew it was because she needed to practice voice acting at night without disturbing the neighbors. Back home Yoru made dinner. Then he took a bath with San-san. After eating, he rested a bit, then started on his homework and revision. The book Yukino Shita asked to borrow. He turned on the desk lamp and began studying into the night. An hour and a half later, he stretched, headed to the living room, and started his cardio workout. Afterward, exhausted, he took a shower and fell into a peaceful sleep. The sun was hidden behind clouds. Tokyo's weather was unpredictable. In the morning, Yoru brushed his teeth while the weather app forecasted moderate to heavy rain in some areas this week. He shoved an umbrella into his bag and left for school with Gabriel. They passed by the bookstore where Nanami worked and greeted her. At Shuchin Academy Yumeko and her popular clique were hanging out as usual before morning class. But today, Yu noticed something was off. Yumeko seemed distracted. Last night, Yumeko had asked about her club and mentioned Yoru. As the leader of their group, Yumeko barely spoke this morning. Before the prep bell rang, they all returned to their seats. Yumeko, you're acting weird today. Yuagahama said before leaving. Huh? Am I? Maybe I didn't sleep well. Yumeko replied, clearly startled and spaced out. Really? Yuagahama didn't fully buy it, but dropped the subject. TCH. Yumeko yawned, eyes fixed on Yoru's desk. She hadn't slept well due to what happened in the alley yesterday. Who would have thought that disgusting fat loser Yoru would ask Yukino to tutor him? After clearing up the misunderstanding, Yumeko didn't want to mess with him anymore. Not because she couldn't, but because she feared how he might react. Yesterday really scared her. Now that she looked back, she felt regret and even a trace of guilt. Being forced to apologize by that fat loser. Her proud, sincere heart couldn't take it. As she thought this, Yoru walked into the classroom, taking his usual shortcut. Mira Yumeko. First thing, he glanced at his seatmate. He stepped over and sat down nervously. Nothing happened. It was as if nothing had occurred between them the day before. He placed his bag down, took out his phone, and started reading the news. At the same time, Nanami finished her shift and rushed to school for morning class. Sorata couldn't hold back anymore. He immediately left his seat and went over. Aoyama-san, can I talk to you for a second? Sorata asked nervously. Kanda-kun? Is it about the manga? Nanami asked, holding the rice balls she made the night before. No. I saw you walking with Kitakami yesterday after you left the store. Oh, that. Nanami said, then smiled a little awkwardly. You misunderstood Kitakami-kun. He is my friend now. A friend? Sorata almost thought he misheard. He and Nanami were just acquaintances who could talk now and then. And that disgusting fat loser became her friend? Aoyama-san, don't you remember what I said before? He's definitely up to something. Sorata's voice trembled slightly. He should have stopped there. Because his words reminded Nanami of her own past suspicions. And filled her with guilt. Kanda-kun, maybe you shouldn't jump to such nasty conclusions about people. Nanami spoke up for Yoru out of guilt, hoping to lessen the weight of her remorse. Besides, one was a friend, and the other was just a classmate. The classmate was clearly in the wrong. Who she should defend was obvious. Gabriel was far cuter than she was. A foreigner with golden hair who had a great relationship with Yoru. If Yoru really had ill intentions, Gabriel would have been the first victim. It would never have gotten to her. Chapter 60, Kanda-soda panicked. Aoyama-san, have you been tricked by him? You actually trust a disgusting fat loser over me? His voice rose, his heart filled with unease. Kanda-kun. Nanami frowned slightly. She had originally thought Sorata was a decent classmate. Kanda-kun, who I choose to be friends with really has nothing to do with you, does it? Why are you trying to interfere in my personal life? She raised her voice too, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation. I'm just worried about your safety. What if he's deceiving you? Sorata said anxiously, watching her expression. I'm fine, Kanda-kun. But please stop meddling in my private life. Nanami took a deep breath. She thought of her family. They had tried to interfere with her dream of becoming a voice actress, strongly opposing her, forcing their will on her, calling it concern. She had worked so hard, studied like crazy, and was lucky enough to get into Shuchen. Thanks to her excellent grades, she received a full scholarship. That covered tuition. But for living expenses and voice acting school fees, she worked part-time and scrimped to get by. Her life was tight. The argument between her and Candice grew intense. Borderline a shouting match. Classmates around them started turning their heads, curious. Nanami awkwardly bit into her simple rice bowl, feeling like she was sitting on pins and needles under everyone's gaze. Sorata felt like he'd been hit with a critical blow. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He wasn't her boyfriend. He had no right to control her private life. But. Sorata looked conflicted and still didn't leave. Kanda-kun, please go back to your seat. I'd like to finish my breakfast. And I really don't appreciate everyone staring at me like this. Nanami chewed her rice calmly and spoke coldly. A moist breeze carried the scent of fresh grass and flowers into the classroom. It looked like it was going to rain today. Aoyama-san, I just don't get it. That guy might be approaching you with bad intentions. Aren't you worried? Sorata's voice had deflated like a balloon. Kitakami-kun isn't like that. He has other friends, and... Nanami's sentence was cut off by the bell for morning reading. Forget it. If you're just worried about me, then don't bother, Kanda-kun. She waved him off, looking down at her breakfast. He has other friends? That disgusting fat loser? Aoyama-san, you. Sorata tried to continue, speaking poorly of Yoru right in front of her. It made Nanami very uncomfortable. He insulted her friend and tried to meddle in her personal choices. Kanda-kun, that's enough. Morning reading has started. She held back the urge to snap at him. She was the type of person who would fight for a friend she recognized as her own. Especially when that friendship was tied to deep guilt. What are Kanda and Aoyama talking about? No clue, maybe they're arguing over something? Why'd they stop? Come on, keep going. I wanna see what happens. The student council's discipline officers are doing rounds. You better sit down and shut up. Hearing the chatter from around the room, Nanami put on a cold face. Damn it. Sorata stomped his foot in frustration and returned to his seat with a grim face. The sudden stomp startled Nanami. Her hand trembled, and the rice ball nearly fell from her hand. She muttered nervously, so aggressive. Back at his desk, Sorata slumped over, feeling extremely frustrated. Why would Nanami trust that fat loser and ignore his sincere feelings? No way. She must have been tricked. I'm going to confront Yoru and get to the bottom of this. He couldn't just watch the girl he liked hang around someone like that. Of course, whether he was a fat loser or not didn't matter. What mattered was that the girl he liked was with another guy. That alone was uncomfortable. With that thought, Sorata made up his mind. After morning class ended, he didn't approach Nanami. Instead, he peeked into Yoru's classroom but hesitated. He decided he'd confront him after school. All day, his mood was wrecked, his mind consumed by this situation. As soon as school ended, he ran downstairs to wait for Yoru. After school, Yoru followed his usual routine and headed to the service club. Down the stairs, changed shoes, straight to the club building. Sorata trailed him, hesitating again when it mattered most. In the end, he just watched Yoru walk into the club building. Damn it. Sorata clenched his fists and threw a punch in frustration. Why was Yoru getting close to Nanami? What was his purpose? No. I need to expose his true nature to Aoyama-san. From the very beginning, Sorata had subconsciously seen Yoru as a romantic rival and assumed the worst of him. He hung around the club building, skipping his own club entirely. It looked like rain was coming. Dark skies and thick clouds gathered. But he still didn't leave. Meanwhile, inside the service club, Yoru, the so-called disgusting fat loser, was getting a one-on-one tutoring session from the school's icy beauty, Yukino. Looks like it's going to rain hard. Yukinon, should we wrap up early? Uegahama checked the time and suggested leaving since there were no more club matters. You go ahead. I brought an umbrella. Yukino replied calmly. She had already noticed the weather since morning. The skies had been gloomy from the start. A breeze picked up around noon. It looked like a storm was coming. She just didn't know how long or how heavy it would be. I brought mine too. Yoru added, glancing out the window. It was only 4 o'clock, but the sky looked like it was already 6. Then let's continue. We'll do a full review next week. Yukino resumed the lesson. Uegahama said goodbye and left the club building. Because of the approaching rain, most students had already left campus. Why hasn't he come out yet? Sorata squinted at the sky, watching leaves get carried by the wind. The air was heavy and damp. It was going to rain any minute. He couldn't wait any longer. He ran into the club building, determined to find Yoru. Chapter 61, Still more. The service club's session ended right on time. I bet there aren't many people left on campus. Yoru packed up his bag while talking. If that's the case, then let's hurry. Yukino wiped the blackboard clean. By the way, how's your cat doing? After putting away the eraser, she asked casually. San-san? Yeah, she's doing well. Got a little fatter. Yoru replied as he adjusted his chair and stood up. I see. Yukino turned her face slightly, as if she wanted to say something but held back. To be honest, she really liked cats. She loved them. Knowing that Yoru had an adorable pet cat, she couldn't help but think about it. I'll head out first. Thanks. Yoru was the first to leave. Yukino still needed to lock up the clubroom afterward. As he stepped out of the service club room, a strong gust of wind blew straight into his face. His hair whipped around as the cold wind rushed inside his uniform, inflating it like a balloon before it collapsed again. So cold. Yoru shivered and hurried down the stairs, keeping close to the wall for support. One floor down was the art club. A few club members were also packing up to leave. Eri, aren't you heading out? A long-haired girl asked her. You guys go first. I'm almost done. Just need a few more strokes. Without looking up, Eri dabbed her brush into red paint. It's going to rain. The girl reminded her, then left with her friends. Eri didn't pay much attention. She just wanted to finish her painting. 10 more minutes and it'd be done. Yoru reached the second floor, and just at the stairwell corner, he was stopped by someone. There you are. I've been waiting forever. Sorata had waited an entire hour, both anxious and bored. Do you need something? Yoru stopped and looked at the unfamiliar boy in front of him. You've been hanging around Aoyama Nanami lately, haven't you? Sorata got straight to the point, staring hard at Yoru. Just a gross fat loser, he thought. Yoru raised an eyebrow and replied, how do you know that? I saw it. What did you do to her? What did you say to her? Sorata was clearly upset, his tone accusatory. That's weird. What I do with Aoyama-san? How does that concern you? Yoru genuinely didn't understand. Who was this guy? As soon as he said that, Sorata's heart skipped a beat. His face went pale. TCH. Everyone knows you stole Kasumijoka-senpai's panties and stockings. You're just some disgusting. Candace sneered and launched into his accusations. But his words were interrupted as a few girls from the art club and Yukino passed by. They only glanced over before continuing downstairs. So what exactly are you trying to say? Once they were gone, Yoru narrowed his eyes. His expression darkened. With his size, one punch would be more than enough to take Sorata down. What are your intentions toward Aoyama-san? You're trying to deceive her, aren't you? Sorata refused to just stand by while a loser like Yoru got close to the girl he liked. Aoyama-san is my friend. And again. Who even are you? Why are you interrogating me like this? Yoru found this guy ridiculous and a bit funny. I'm Aoyama Nanami's boyfriend. Can you just stay away from her? Sorata took a deep breath and said it with a trembling voice. His heart was pounding like mad. Faster than when he'd played a full 90-minute soccer match. He knew he was lying. But he told himself, this lie was necessary. It was to keep Yoru away from Nanami. He was sure Yoru had ulterior motives. A lie for a good cause. Boyfriend. Huh? That answer surprised Yoru. If this guy really was Nanami's boyfriend, then it'd make sense that he'd be hostile toward someone getting close to her. Yes. That's right. Sorata's adrenaline surged, his entire body trembling. You're probably just misunderstanding. Yoru's expression returned to normal as he calmly explained. I don't care if it's a misunderstanding. Just stay away from her. That's all I want. Sorata forced himself to keep his composure and continued. This was all for Aoyama-san's sake. Ha. Sorata let out a long breath. Feeling quite pleased with himself, he gave Yoru a warning glance before walking away. Only after exiting the club building did he finally clench his trembling fist. He walked stiffly, as if his body no longer belonged to him. A strong wind howled, scattering leaves. The sky was dark and gloomy, like the end of the world. So Aoyama-san has a boyfriend. Yoru muttered to himself, twisting his waist slightly. A sudden urge to pee struck him. As soon as he stepped into the restroom, a blast of wind tore through the building like a scythe, sweeping up leaves and damp dirt, howling like a ghost. The wind died down, but then came the rain. A torrential downpour roared down from the sky, the sound of it filling Yoru's ears in an instant. He shivered and awkwardly pulled up his pants. His underwear was tight and uncomfortable. Not because it was too small. This rain's insane. Yoru pulled out his umbrella from his backpack and gazed out at the curtain of white rain. This was even heavier than the day he first met Nanami. Honestly, in his memory, he'd never seen rain this intense. The moment he stepped out of the bathroom, he had to open his umbrella and hold it to one side of his body. The strong wind blew the rain sideways, soaking everything in its path. Raindrops the size of fava beans belted the ground like machine gun fire. Yoru walked slowly to avoid slipping, but he couldn't help worrying. His umbrella was flimsy. Could it withstand this kind of storm? This rain didn't just come with wind and water. It made the air freezing cold. Even Yoru's thick layer of body fat couldn't stop the chill from seeping in. When the wind carried some of the rain onto his skin, it gave him goosebumps. At the stairwell corner, Yoru shifted his backpack to his chest to avoid it getting soaked, then made his way down. With rain this heavy, getting a little wet was inevitable. Thump thump thump. The sound of his heavy steps echoed loudly through the storm. In the corner of the first floor, Ariri was curled up, shivering, hugging her backpack. Her thin school uniform skirt offered little protection. Hearing the footsteps, she perked up. Someone's there? Ariri looked up, surprised and hopeful, eyes sparkling as she looked toward the stairs. She hadn't brought an umbrella. She thought the rain wouldn't last long, wouldn't be too heavy. But because she spent just 10 extra minutes finishing her painting, she was caught in the sudden downpour the moment she reached the first floor. With no choice, she had retreated to the corner for warmth. The footsteps drew closer. Ariri stood up, rubbing her bare arms for warmth. The rain was so heavy that visibility was less than 3 meters. It was like being trapped in fog. Even her phone had no signal. This kind of rain could last until the next morning. Ariri worried she wouldn't survive another hour before freezing. Just when she was about to lose hope, someone finally came. She stepped toward the base of the stairs and peeked out. Yoru, holding an umbrella and bracing himself against the wall, was walking down. He nearly slipped when a head suddenly popped out from the stairwell's blind spot. Sawamura? Yoru quickly steadied himself and looked down, calling out her name. Ariri blinked in surprise. She ducked aside in a panic. It's him? No way. Why him? Leaning against a wall, her small body trembled. Not sure if from shock or fear. Her expression was complicated. What was she thinking? Yoru came all the way down, still holding the umbrella in front of him. He glanced at Ariri. She was leaning against a wall, her cute face drained of color, her soft lips pale from the cold. Yoru paused for a second. He looked at Ariri, then at his umbrella. And thought to himself, so Sawamura-san doesn't have an umbrella, huh? What are you looking at? Ariri's lips trembled as she asked the question. Yoru hadn't even tried to hide his movements just now. After speaking, Ariri's gaze unconsciously drifted to Yoru's umbrella. She wanted to leave together with Yoru, but Ariri looked up at Yoru. This repulsive fat otaku in her eyes. Suddenly, her heartbeat skipped. From her angle, looking at Yoru, she was shocked to find that he looked exactly like the fat otaku from the nightmare she'd had before. Exactly the same, except the hair was a bit shorter. Gulp. Ariri swallowed nervously and shrank back a little. Why hasn't he left? It's just the two of us here. Don't tell me he's thinking. No, maybe I can just share the umbrella with him and leave together. Her thoughts bounced around in all directions. Yoru calmly moved his gaze away from the gold treasure box above Ariri's head and gave his umbrella a shake. This girl who usually acted all high and mighty whenever she saw him, looking down at him with disdain, was admittedly cute. But Yoru felt nothing positive about her. He's still not leaving? Should I ask if I can share the umbrella? Seeing that Yoru still hadn't left, Ariri was suddenly hopeful. But the moment she thought of it, she hesitated again. If it were a girl holding the umbrella, or even just an average guy, it would have been fine. But it had to be Yoru. That fat, disgusting otaku. Yoru had no idea what Ariri was thinking. If he did, he'd probably curse her to death. Wanting to share an umbrella with him while still looking down on him for being a fat otaku? Chapter 62, Umbrella Still. Yoru never had any intention of helping her. He stayed on the first floor for a bit, waiting to see if the rain would ease up. It didn't. It only got colder. Holding the umbrella, he decided to head home even if it meant getting a little wet. As he moved, Ariri was startled. Huh? She thought Yoru had stayed there with the intention of helping her. But then he just walked off. Hey, wait. Wait. Ariri was stunned, but quickly snapped out of it and rushed forward. Only to be driven back by the downpour. The bin-sized raindrops actually stung a little when they hit. What is it? Yoru frowned and turned back from the rain. Does Ariri really want to share the umbrella? Want me to help her? No way. Yoru scoffed silently. Can you walk with me for a bit? Ariri hesitated, stammering. She was clearly asking for help, yet it sounded like some kind of shy confession. Walk with you? Yoru didn't hear clearly, but could guess what she meant. Huh? Ariri nodded hard, staring at the fat otaku in front of her. She figured, since she was already asking so earnestly, Yoru wouldn't possibly refuse. He should be thrilled, right? If only it were someone else. Ariri sighed inwardly. Even now, she couldn't stop thinking how disgusting it was that it had to be Yoru. No. Yoru shook his head without hesitation. But after saying that, he didn't walk away immediately. He stayed put, wanting to see how this proud little girl would react. A strong gust of wind suddenly tilted the umbrella. Rain slammed down furiously, drumming loudly against the umbrella's surface. Ariri took a step back in disbelief, her mouth open wide. She even forgot about the cold for a moment. He rejected me? Rejected by a fat otaku? Shouldn't a guy like him be overjoyed to be this close to me? They'd dream about this, wouldn't they? As a gin artist, Ariri knew her audience all too well. Sawamura, do you really think that looking down on me, calling me a gross fat otaku all the time, wouldn't piss me off? Seeing her like this, Yoru wasn't in a hurry anymore. He mocked her instead. Hearing that, Ariri wanted to get angry. But when she looked at Yoru, for some reason something came to mind, and she held it in. Hey. Yoru gave a smug little laugh and turned to walk away. Whatever. Call me petty or whatever. To most people, his reputation was worse than just petty anyway. His life was already bleak. Wait. I'll give you money, okay? Just lend me your umbrella. Yoru had already turned to leave, but at the last second, Ariri suddenly thought of her trump card and clung to it like a drowning girl to driftwood. Who doesn't like money? Money. Sure enough, Yoru turned back. If Ariri was offering money, that changed things. In his eyes, she was just a conceited girl who looked down on him. Not someone like Utaha or Kaguya. If it were them, no amount of money would have convinced him to help. Back downstairs, Yoru closed his umbrella. How about 30,000 yen? Just help me once, okay? Looking at Yoru's massive body, Ariri remembered the scenes from her nightmare and took a step back. She couldn't help but start to feel anxious and afraid. She was a delicate little girl. Yoru's size could crush her, and she wouldn't even be able to resist. He wouldn't do something, would he? Her imagination ran wild with fear again. How about this, Sawamura? You roll your eyes like usual, look all arrogant, and beg me. Then I'll give you a free ride. Yoru said with twisted amusement. Didn't she love looking at him with contempt? You. What kind of condition is that? Ariri stomped her little foot in shame and anger. Fine, don't want to? Then forget it. Isn't this what you usually do to me? Yoru wanted the money too, after all. I'll give you 50,000. And I'll apologize too. Deal? Ariri was conflicted. She knew exactly what kind of disgusting thoughts this fat otaku was having. He was doing it on purpose. Fine. Yoru hesitated a moment, then nodded. What an unexpected windfall. 50,000 yen. That's a fifth of a fresh graduate's monthly income after taxes. Practically free money. To a high schooler like him, even with a decent family background, it was a fair sum. No. 80,000. But I have one condition. Now that he'd agreed, Ariri first felt relieved, then immediately added her condition. She didn't want to stand under the same umbrella as this disgusting fat otaku. Their bodies would definitely touch. Ariri was loaded. She didn't care about money. Let's hear it. Yoru looked at her oddly, wondering why she wanted to give him even more money. Lend me your umbrella. I'll run outside, buy another one, and bring it back to you. Okay? Ariri was shivering from the cold, her lips turning pale. Your umbrella isn't big enough. For the both of us. Yoru nodded. He wasn't too worried Ariri would run off with the money over 80,000 yen. With his large frame, if he went out in the rain, he'd definitely get soaked. He could have her buy him a raincoat while she was out. There were stores nearby. It shouldn't take long. After that, Ariri reluctantly muttered an apology, and the umbrella was handed over to her. Ariri left, braving the wind and rain with Yoru's umbrella over her head. As he watched her figure vanish into the downpour, Yoru felt the cold sink in even deeper. Of course. If he knew Ariri was still thinking of him as a disgusting fat otaku, still worried he might do something to her, he wouldn't have wanted to earn that money. He might not even be able to hold back his emotions. Ever since Yumiko triggered something in Yoru, something had changed inside him. Ariri held up the umbrella with both hands, walking through the torrential rain. Shuchin's drainage system was well designed, so there wasn't much water pooling on the road. But the rain was just too intense. It didn't take long for her shoes and calves to get soaked. A gust of wind hit, and the already shivering Ariri almost lost her balance and toppled over. So cold. Ariri felt like her brain had frozen solid, gone completely blank. Like a low-grade automaton, she trudged step by step toward the gates of Shuchen. The rain slammed against Yoru's umbrella, the force pressing down its top before it bounced back. What should have been just a few minutes of walking took Ariri over 10 minutes to reach the front gate. Now, she was sniffling hard, the only thought in her mind being to get home and take a hot bath. She pushed forward through the storm, unable to feel warmth anywhere on her body. Her soft lips had turned pale and blue. Aku. Already not in great health, Ariri let out a violent sneeze and nearly collapsed. Just then, a taxi returning from the shopping district passed by and noticed her standing in the rain. Because Tokyo's public transportation is so convenient, taxi fares tend to be expensive, so most customers were unsuspecting tourists. But when at trains like this, many people can't use public transit and don't want to get drenched, so business picks up. Beep beep. The driver stopped the car a short distance in front of Ariri, hazard lights flashing and nearly invisible through the rain. "Miss, it's warm inside the car. There's heater." The driver called out loudly. Ariri was nearly frozen stiff, her mind moving sluggishly. It took her a few seconds to process what he said before she instinctively walked over and climbed into the taxi. Inside was dry and warm, with heated air filling the space. After closing the door, Ariri gave the driver her address, her voice trembling. The driver couldn't even hear her clearly the first time. Aku. 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 She sneezed several times in a row, then leaned back against the seat and shut her eyes, visibly miserable. Her forehead was burning hot, yet her body was ice cold. She couldn't feel any warmth. The driver turned up the heat and pulled out of the area with his fog lights on. Ariri, her head frozen and sluggish, seemed to have forgotten something important. Or maybe she'd just gone completely numb. Meanwhile, Yoru was still crouched where Ariri had left him, hands stuffed inside his uniform jacket for warmth. So cold. Why isn't Sawamura back yet? It's almost dark. For the first time, Yoru's thick fat wasn't doing anything to help. He pulled out his signal-less phone and checked the time. Just after 5 p.m. But it was already as dark as 7 p.m. Visibility was getting worse. Another 10 minutes passed. Yoru figured Ariri should have returned by now. As he waited, shivering, he started doing warm-up exercises. Oh. If Sawamura isn't the culprit, then who is? I thought the girl with the golden treasure box above her head was the bad one, so I assumed Sawamura was the culprit. But then both Kato-san and that completely unfamiliar Hayasaka girl had it too, so that theory's out. Oh. So frustrating. Yoru muttered to pass the time while doing mountain climbers on the ground to stay warm. The sky continued to darken. There was no sign of the storm letting up. Another 10 minutes went by, and Yoru couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up, staring in the direction Ariri had left, his expression gradually turning grim. Did something happen to her? Or did she ditch me? Once that thought came to mind, he grew more and more suspicious. She'd been gone over 20 minutes. At a brisk pace, the station was only about 10 minutes away. She ditched me? Yoru took a step forward, only to be hit by a blast of cold wind and rain. The chill slammed into him, making his whole body tremble. He instinctively stepped back. She still hasn't come back? Yoru figured if he waited any longer, it'd be completely dark soon. Still clinging to hope that she'd return any second now, he waited a few more minutes. But his expression grew worse. Did she really ditch me? Yoru struggled with the thought before finally realizing he couldn't keep waiting. With the storm making visibility awful, waiting any longer would mean walking home in pitch black. He couldn't just grope his way home in the dark, could he? Damn it. Thinking about Ariri's usual condescending look, Yoru cursed and cautiously stuck out his hand. Raindrops struck his palm hard enough to sting. If he ran through the rain like this, he'd be soaked in under 10 seconds. But he couldn't wait anymore. Cursing Ariri under his breath, Yoru grabbed his bag and hurried upstairs. In front of the service club room, he set his bag down by the door and tucked his phone inside it. Holding a wad of cash, he left the bag behind. Hope the trains aren't suspended. He quickened his pace, rushing around the school's club building, looking for anything that could shield him from the rain. All while stewing in anger over Ariri's broken promise. She'd forced him to brave the storm and stumble home in the dark. A few minutes later, Yoru found a discarded piece of cardboard. He raised it over his head, gritting his teeth, and dashed into the rain. In theory, it seemed like it might help. Reality was cruel. Chapter 63, No More. The cardboard didn't last 10 seconds. The rain soaked it instantly, the wind tore it apart. It was nothing but a hindrance. It didn't stop the rain at all. Within moments, Yoru felt drenched to the bone. The icy raindrops felt like needles piercing his skin. It was freezing and painful, and he shook uncontrollably. And that wasn't even the worst part. Breathing became difficult. The heavy rain thinned the air, and Yoru hadn't even gone far before he found himself struggling to breathe. Worse, the downpour flooded his face. Water slid into his eyes and nose. It was unbearable. He couldn't even open his eyes properly. Squinting through slitted lids, he tried to keep going. Breathing through his nose became impossible, so he opened his mouth. But rain poured in, choking him. And the sky was completely black. Yoru had never felt so miserable. Even the simple act of breathing felt like a luxury. It was torture. Both physically and mentally. Suddenly, his foot slipped. He crashed to the cold, wet pavement. He didn't know whether it was rain or tears that streamed endlessly down his cheeks. Back in the taxi, Yuri slowly woke up. Aku. She sneezed and instinctively hugged her arms, her mind still foggy. Wait, she was in a taxi? The umbrella? Suddenly, she remembered Yoru's umbrella and opened her eyes wide. Crap, I forgot. She shouted in alarm. Miss, we're almost at your stop. The driver said, turning the car around a corner. Hearing that, Yuri scooted over to the window. A familiar street appeared before her eyes. She was almost home. Her heart pounding with panic, Yuri quickly pulled out her phone. 6:17 a.m. She had only slept an hour and had already left the Naval District. He's still waiting for me at school. Yuri suddenly remembered Yoru, grabbed her umbrella, and wanted to ask the driver to turn around in frustration. But it's still raining outside, but it's just a drizzle now. Her pale little hand gripping the umbrella loosened. With rain that light, he should be fine, right? Besides, the image of a fat otaku flashed in Yuri's mind again, sending a chill down her spine. She wanted to stay far away from Yoru. She was scared. She didn't want any contact with him. If it had been someone else, she probably would have turned back. At worst, I'll just give him a bit more money, that should make up for it, right? She was trying to convince herself. Deep down, the real reason was that Yoru was a disgusting fat otaku. She didn't want to be near him. She was scared. That's why she refused to go back. Meanwhile, Yoru still hadn't left Shuchin Academy. The storm was too strong. He couldn't leave. Every step made him feel short of breath, like he was suffocating. It was freezing. A cold that seeped deep into his bones. The sky had turned completely dark. He couldn't see the road at all. Right now, he was hiding inside a bathroom near the school gate. Not caring about the filth, he curled up in a corner, his fat body hunched into a ball, shivering uncontrollably. It wasn't until past 9 p.m. that the storm finally began to ease and turned into a light rain. Navigating through the dark, with only the top of his head feeling hot, Yoru tripped several times on his way home in the drizzle. San had been waiting at the door for its master to return. When Yoru entered, it was so startled it took off running. Back home, Yoru rushed into the shower, stripped off his clothes, and wiped his face dry with a towel. The exposed skin on his hands and arms had gone pale, wrinkled, and started to peel from the rain. Yuri Spencer Sawamura. Yoru gritted her name out between his teeth, on the verge of losing it. Aku. 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 Suddenly, he sneezed several times in a row. His teeth chattered uncontrollably as he steadied himself against the wall. A while later, Yoru was soaking in the small bath. The warm water gave him a bit of relief. But he still hadn't recovered from the experience. Cold. Helplessness. Fear. Despair. Breathlessness. It was all because of Yuri. Without realizing it, Yoru clenched his fists. He was going to confront Yuri tomorrow. That night, huddled under the covers, Yoru was endlessly irritated by the sound of rain outside. He drank some cold medicine, but it didn't seem to help much. His body still felt awful. It wasn't just the fever and chills. It was also the lingering trauma from enduring that storm, the 2 hours trembling in a filthy toilet corner, the difficulty breathing as he walked through the storm in total darkness. Later in the night, Yoru's body couldn't take it anymore, and he finally drifted off into a deep sleep. The next day, he was woken up by Gabriel. Gabriel hadn't slept well either. Just had dark circles under her eyes. Yoru forced down a little breakfast and went with Gabriel to school. He was going to confront Yuri. That stuck-up, arrogant, half-blooded girl who always rolled her eyes at him. You don't look so good. Gabriel looked at Yoru with concern. Cough. Cough. I'm fine. Yoru clenched his fists tightly. The scenery outside the window passed by in a blur. They arrived? He got off. Yoru walked so fast on the way that he left Gabriel behind. What's up with Kitakami-kun today? Passing by a bookstore, Nanami asked Gabriel curiously. He has a fever. Don't worry about it. Gabriel replied. Yoru went straight to the service club, grabbed his bag, and headed straight for the classroom building despite his sick body. But when he stormed in full of fury, Airi still hadn't arrived. He waited until homeroom started, then checked again. It was Friday. Since she hadn't shown up yet, she probably wasn't coming today. Too scared to come? Yoru was burning with rage and had no way to let it out. His mind was starting to spiral. He was off the entire day. He didn't feel well and didn't go to the service club either. After returning home, he drank some more cold medicine and lay down again. That night, Nanami brought over a bowl of herbal medicine. Kitakami-kun, drink this. I learned it from my grandma. It really works for colds. She stood at the door, looking at the weak Yoru with concern. Huh? Yoru, sluggish, nodded and took the bowl. Then he suddenly remembered something. Oh right, Aoyama-san. Your boyfriend told me to stay away from you. Was there some misunderstanding between you two? After speaking, he stared at the dark, murky liquid in the bowl and took a bitter sip. My boyfriend? Nanami blinked her pretty eyes, looking completely surprised. She had never liked any boys before, let alone had a boyfriend. Chapter 64, Prologue ends up, so bitter. Deciding to just get it over with, Yoru downed the entire bowl in one go and sighed in relief. But the bitter taste climbed up his throat the next second, and he almost threw up. Quickly, he covered his mouth and handed the bowl back to Nanami with his other hand. She accepted the bowl, looking at Yoru and suddenly thinking of Sorata. Was that guy pretending to be my boyfriend? Sorata? What's wrong with him? How annoying. Frustrated by the thought, Nanami turned to leave. Yoru stood by the door for a while before finally suppressing the bitterness and closing it. Dragging his sick body back to bed, he dove into the warm covers. Homework, training, whatever. Forget it. He didn't even have the strength to stand properly. Closing his eyes, the warmth of the medicine spread through his stomach. Yoru tried hard to fall asleep. But his nose was stuffed. His head burned. He kept coughing. He couldn't fall asleep. It wasn't until the early morning, around 3 or 4 a.m., that he finally slipped into a shallow sleep. And he didn't wake until the afternoon the next day. When he opened his eyes, his whole body was sore and weak. He just wanted to stay in bed forever. But his parched throat felt like it was cut by knives, forcing him to get up for water. There was a thermos cup on the bedside table. Yoru didn't even care how old the water inside was. His hand trembled slightly as he unscrewed the lid and took small sips. His throat felt a bit soothed, slightly more comfortable. I'm sick. Cough. He lifted the blanket, sat up on the bed, and muttered before starting to cough again. Touching his burning forehead, Yoru sat still for a while, then leaned against the wall and stood up. After just a few steps, dizziness hit him. It was hard to say if it was because of the fever, high blood pressure, or having not eaten. Any of those could be contributing. His legs gave out, the room spun, and his vision blurred. He slumped to the floor and stayed there for several minutes before finally managing to get up again and head to the kitchen. He grabbed some instant food and milk, forcing something into his stomach to regain a bit of strength before leaving the kitchen. Meow meow. Meow. A hungry San-san ran to his feet, rubbing affectionately against him while looking up at Yoru, clearly sensing something was wrong. You too, huh? Yoru held his forehead and smiled bitterly. Then, he poured some cat food and water for San-san, ordered takeout, and bought some fever medicine. He had no choice. He felt awful. After eating the takeout and taking the medicine, Yoru crawled back under the covers and stayed there until evening. He couldn't sleep, but he did feel better. That's when he remembered what really mattered. Airi. Yoru narrowed his eyes, muttering her name over and over. His expression grew twisted, and his blood pressure spiked. At this rate, he worried he might pass out from hypertension. Back in middle school, when he was even fatter, he'd been hospitalized for 10 days because of it. A diplomat's daughter. Yoru forced himself not to think about Airi and picked up his phone from the bedside table. He intended to check the news. But his fingers moved on their own and searched up Airi's father instead. One of the top results showed the diplomat and his wife on a visit to the Kansai region. After all, in Japan, diplomats represented the British Empire, and such official trips were unavoidable. So that means Sawamura is home alone? Still holding on to a sliver of hope, Yoru began trying different ways to search for her home address. Nothing came up. He wasn't too surprised. After all, that kind of information was private, especially for a diplomat. Another day passed. It was Sunday. Yoru woke up fairly early. The first thing he did was check his forehead. Still warm. Slightly better than yesterday. He made a simple breakfast for himself, ate, did some homework, and forced himself to read a bit, all while coughing and blowing his nose. He didn't dare take too much cold or fever medicine. He was too overweight. Even though the instructions said 3 times a day, he only took it twice. Cough. Hiss. If it still doesn't get better in 2 days, I'll go see a doctor. Muttering to himself, Yoru quickly swallowed his medicine and took a warm bath. He was more anxious than anyone. His precious time was being wasted on this illness. Just thinking about the 2 mountains of pressure on his chest made him irritable. Monday. Yoru wasn't feeling much better. Still coughing, runny nose, low-grade fever, body aching. But he got up early. Very early. He couldn't wait. He had to find Ariri and confront her. The storm had passed, and the warm sunlight shone down on him. You sure you're okay? You still look sick. Want to take the day off? Gabriel looked at Yoru with concern. He didn't want to talk and just shook his head slowly. After they parted, Yoru headed straight to the classroom building, walking with a bit more spring in his step. At that moment, Ariri was sitting by the window, chatting with a few girls at the desks around her. Yoru suddenly appeared at the window, startling them all. Sawamura. Tell me. Why didn't you bring back my umbrella? Yoru was panting, his voice breaking from the strain, almost gasping for breath. But anyone could hear the suppressed rage in his voice. Something was off. Like a bomber plane carrying a nuclear payload. You. Ariri snapped out of it, glancing nervously between Yoru and the other girls. She didn't want anyone to know she had borrowed an umbrella from him. Borrowing from a gross fat otaku. How humiliating would that be? She always maintained a cold, flawless image at school. She didn't even entertain Tomoya, someone she actually liked. So why would she be seen acknowledging someone like him? After Yoru finished speaking, he didn't say another word. He bit his lip and stared daggers at her. What's the rush? It's just an umbrella. Go away already. Ariri acted indifferent and waved her hand at Yoru as if shooing away a fly. She didn't know that Yoru hadn't come for the umbrella. She just wanted him gone. Just an umbrella? Yoru nearly exploded. His bloodshot eyes were filled with rage. Because he lacked that one umbrella, he suffered so much. He was still burning with fever. It was unbearable. Why are you making such a big deal? Ariri puffed out her chest and looked at her bag. She had brought both the umbrella and the money. But in front of the whole class, giving money to this otaku? No way. She just couldn't do it. Do you know how I got home without an umbrella? Yoru couldn't contain his anger anymore and reached out toward Ariri. Ariri, her nerves already taut, dodged quickly and stood up. Her sudden movement drew the attention of everyone in class. Huh? What's going on? Isn't that the fat creep from the other class? Why did he pull his hand back? Is he harassing Ariri? Whispers spread through the classroom. Feeling all eyes on him, Yoru pulled his hand back. Too many people. Ariri, what's going on? Why's he bothering you? What's this about an umbrella? One of the girls talking to Ariri asked curiously. It's nothing, just an umbrella. Ariri cursed under her breath. Why hadn't this creep left yet? What was he trying to do? But on the surface, she kept up the act. No one could tell. Everyone ignored the umbrella after that. Yoru stood at the window, forcing himself to calm down. He could feel his blood pressure spiking. His heart was pounding out of his chest. Too many people right now. He'd wait until after school when fewer people were around. Seeing how everyone was glaring at Yoru, Ariri's courage suddenly grew. Afraid people might think she had something to do with him, she put on a disgusted expression and snapped, "Hey, get away from me already. Don't come near me. You're disgusting." And she meant some of it, too. Sure, I didn't come back, but didn't the rain turn into a drizzle later? Was that really such a big deal? Ariri muttered to herself, annoyed that Yoru came looking for her. She was scared of losing face. Hey. What do you think you're doing? Trying to harass her? If you don't leave, I'm telling the teacher. Stay away from Ariri. The other girls who had been talking to Ariri also stepped in, trying to drive Yoru away. The boys in the class were also glaring at him. Yoru clenched his fists. He'd get her after school. He gave Ariri one last cold glance before walking off. Ariri, how could you be connected to that disgusting fat creep? I've got nothing to do with him. He's just some gross fatty. Just seeing him makes me sick. Yoru had only walked a few steps when he heard Ariri's voice again, full of disdain. This time, he had proof. He wasn't letting Ariri off. She was the one responsible for everything he'd suffered. She had deceived him, showed no remorse, and even continued insulting him, calling him a disgusting fat otaku. Enraged, Yoru entered the classroom through the back door. Just like usual, he put down his school bag. Yumiko glanced at him sideways, a strange chill creeping up her back. Yoru's presence today was terrifying. More intense than the day in the alleyway. All day long, Yoru was in an awful mood. He kept coughing and his nose was stuffy. Whenever he stood up, he felt dizzy. He didn't pay attention in class at all. Every break, he just lay on his desk and didn't move. He waited until school was over in the afternoon. He was the first to dash out the back door to find Ariri. Where is she? The classrooms were only separated by a wall. As soon as he stepped out, he saw that Ariri's classroom was already locked. Not a single person inside. PE class? He paused for a moment and then realized it might be PE class. Quickly grabbing his bag, he rushed downstairs. He was feeling anxious and uneasy, afraid he might miss her again. Once PE ended, the students often went home directly. Sometimes they were even dismissed 5 or 10 minutes early. Yoru ran down from the classroom building, heading straight to the club complex. If Ariri had gone to her club, he could intercept her there. He was early and fast. He even knew where the art club was located. He had seen it before while looking for cardboard to shield himself from the rain. He dashed all the way. When he reached the second-floor stairwell landing, Yoru had to lean against the wall. A wave of dizziness hit him hard and he nearly fell. He could barely breathe. Cough cough. Cough cough. After a violent fit of coughing, he touched his burning forehead. Still running a low-grade fever, clenching his teeth, he continued upward. He was really early. The art club hadn't even opened yet. Yoru stood on that floor, waiting for Ariri to arrive. Several minutes later, Yukino and Yua came up and saw Yoru leaning against the railing, letting the wind blow past him. Kitakami-kun. Yua greeted in surprise. Huh? Oh, it's you guys. Yoru had been deep in thought and got startled. You don't look too well. If you're sick, there's no need to come to the service club. Yukino said flatly. Yeah, did you catch a cold? Yu added, nodding. Got it. Yoru replied quietly. He planned to deal with Ariri first before heading to the club. After that, Yukino and Yua left. Yoru continued waiting a few more minutes. The breeze brushed past him as he stood there, fists clenched tightly. He had mentally prepared himself. Ariri must have left early after PE and didn't come to the art club. Tomorrow. I'll get here early and wait for her at the school gate. Yoru coughed all the way down the stairs, leaning against the walls, dragging his sick, exhausted body home. Meanwhile, near Shuchin's soccer field, Nanami had tracked down Sorata, who had came to attend his club activities. Aoyama-san. Sorata swallowed nervously as he looked at the beautiful girl he secretly had a crush on. Aoyama-san came to find me? Did she realize she was wrong, realize how bad that fat otaku is? Good thing I didn't give up. Sorata fantasized happily. But the next second, Nanami's face turned cold. Her expression burned with anger as she spoke. She called out his full name harshly. Not friendly at all. In fact, it was clearly full of disgust. Candace Sorata, you went around saying you were my boyfriend? You told Kitakami-kun that you were my boyfriend and told him to stay away from me? Thump. A jolt ran through Sorata. His fantasy was shattered, his face full of disbelief. What hurt most was that the girl he liked was standing up for that fat otaku, and she was upset with him. Calling him by name, not even politely. Candace Sorata, didn't you hear what I just asked you? Nanami was trembling with anger, trying to contain her fury. Aoyama-san. Please, let me explain. Sorata's face turned pale. Just answer the question. Nanami narrowed her eyes and stared directly at him. She had once thought he was a good classmate, someone who could become a friend. The first misunderstanding she let slide. He had said a lot of awful things about Yoru and misled her, which made her wary. The second time, even after she explained the truth, he still didn't believe it and kept attacking her friend. He imposed his own assumptions onto her and even tried to intimidate her before leaving. She thought that would be the end of it. But then, he had the nerve to pretend to be her boyfriend and say those things to Yoru. This crossed her bottom line. Yes. It was me. Sorata was stunned by the questions and blurted it out. He didn't understand why Nanami was reacting so harshly. And why did he admit it so easily? Why did you say that? Why pretend to be my boyfriend? Nanami's chest rose and fell. She took a deep breath to calm herself. I did it for your sake. That fat otaku. He's disgusting. Sorata pounded his chest, trying to sound passionate. Shut up. Before he could finish, Nanami snapped at him, raising her eyebrows in fury. There he goes insulting her friend again. Sorata looked like he had just swallowed something rotten. I'll say it one last time. Kitakami-kun is a good person. None of the things you're imagining are true. Don't insult my friend or say things about him behind his back. And you and I have nothing to do with each other. I don't need your useless concern. What exactly do you think you're doing? Nanami kept speaking, and by the end, she was so angry she let out a bitter laugh. I did it for you. I like you, Aoyama-san. Sorata's brain had turned to mush, and he blurted it out in panic. Suddenly, the air froze. 3 black lines practically appeared on Nanami's forehead as she gave him a disgusted look. "You're the disgusting one, Candace Sorata. Take your so-called feelings and shove them. You make me want to puke. Ugh." As if to drive it home, she even mimed gagging. Then she shot him one last repulsed glance before turning and walking away. Claiming to like someone and using that as an excuse to fake being their boyfriend. Revolting. Sorata stood frozen, her final words echoing in his ears like a curse. And each word crushed his heart a little more. After she was gone, Sorata drifted aimlessly toward the school gate, still unwilling to give up, still looking for Nanami. At the gate, he spotted her. She had run into Yoru. "Kitakami-kun, are you still not better?" Cough. "Not yet." Yoru turned around, coughing as he answered. "If you're still not better by tomorrow, go to the hospital," Nanami said softly. After parting with Nanami, Yoru returned home. He made a simple meal, took his meds, played with Sansan a little, handled a few chores, then lay back down to rest. Still coughing, still congested, still running a low fever. Even his chest felt tight from time to time. After a long night, he got up and touched his forehead. Still the same as yesterday. The fever hadn't gone down. His chest felt a little worse. He didn't think much of it. He'd go to the hospital after school if it persisted. His health had never been good. His immune system was weaker than normal. He made breakfast, then sent a message to Gabriel, letting her know he had something to do and was heading out early. After eating, taking his medicine, cleaning Sansan's litter box, and refilling her food and water, Yoru took out the trash and headed for school. It was still before 7:00 a.m. Yoru took the bus and arrived near the school gate around 7:30. At that time, it was still quite early. There were only a few students scattered along the way. Cough. Cough. Yoru sniffled and took a sip of warm water from his thermos. He quietly waited for Ariri to arrive. After 10 or so minutes, more students began to appear on the road. Yoru endured his discomfort, trying to stand in the sunlight to stay warm, squinting as he carefully scanned the passing students. Before long, a flash of dazzling blonde caught his eye. Finally. Cough. "She's here." Coughing, Yoru quickly walked toward Ariri. Ariri also spotted the conspicuous Yoru right away. She reached into her bag to make sure the umbrella and a stack of cash were still there, then nervously looked around. She didn't want anyone seeing her talking to a disgusting fat otaku like Yoru. "Ariri Sawamura." Yoru walked over and called her full name. "What are you yelling for? Come with me." Ariri was startled, then angrily glared at Yoru. "Hey! Yelling?" Yoru gave a cold chuckle, his expression growing darker. "What do you want?" Ariri's eyelid twitched. Something felt off. Yoru was clearly acting strange. "What do you think, Ariri? I'm like this because of you." Yoru's face twisted with fury. "Huh, you? What are you trying to do? I brought the money and the umbrella. Take them and stay the hell away from me, you." Ariri flinched, almost blurting something out, then quickly changed her words. "Stay away from you? Do you know what I went through going home without an umbrella?" Yoru's lips curled into a sneer, his voice burning with rage. "So what, you got a little wet? I'll give you more money to make up for it, okay?" Ariri lifted her chin, her face full of indifference and a touch of reluctance in her eyes. "Enough already, I don't want anyone to see me talking to you." She waved her hand dismissively, completely different from the pitiful tone she had when borrowing the umbrella. That look pushed Yoru over the edge. He lashed out with a big hand, reaching toward Ariri. He admitted, it was impulsive. But Ariri had been having nightmares because of him. She was on guard. Yoru was fat, sluggish, and sick. Ariri easily dodged. "What do you think you're doing?" Ariri backed up several steps, glaring at Yoru in shock. "What? I feel like beating you up would finally make me feel better. Looking at that smug face of yours makes me sick, you damn bitch." Yoru gasped for air, his breathing ragged. "You bastard, disgusting. It's just." Ariri snapped back at him, about to finish her sentence. It was just a missing umbrella, right? But halfway through, she suddenly stopped. "You damn bitch." Yoru shouted again. "You're disgusting. Get away from me, you fat freak." Ariri fired back quickly, then ran away in fear. She didn't understand at all. Was it really that serious? It was just some light rain, a drizzle. Was it really worth this? She even said she would pay him back. And now he showed up again, trying to attack her? Yoru didn't chase after her. He knew he couldn't catch up. He clenched his fists and swung them furiously. His chest felt tight, his breathing labored, and his blood pressure skyrocketed. His head was spinning, and he felt awful. After standing still to rest for a while, Yoru still didn't feel better. He quickly found a roadside concrete pillar, gently touched it to steady himself, and slowly sat down. Meanwhile, his other hand was busy checking his forehead, patting his chest. It was hard to breathe. His breathing was labored. He felt like he was about to pass out. At that moment, Yoru realized he had let his emotions get the better of him. He was sick, had high blood pressure, and now felt dizzy. He finally sat down, holding his head, lightly swaying and pinching his philtrum. The sudden discomfort made him anxious. From a distance, Fujiwara Chika, on her way to school, noticed everything. She recognized Yoru and saw something wasn't right. Isn't that Kitakami-kun? That guy. He doesn't look too good. As the student council secretary, Fujiwara was well informed. She hesitated, unsure of what to do, and kept watching Yoru from afar. A few students passed by during that time, but they only gave curious glances and moved on. Ah! Fujiwara finally couldn't hold back and quickly walked over. Yoru, feeling dizzy, tried to drink some water to ease the feeling, but his trembling hands dropped the lid at Fujiwara's feet. Are you okay? Fujiwara picked up the lid and cautiously handed it back. Yoru's vision was blurry. He looked up with difficulty, the discomfort too strong to recognize her at first. Let me help. After checking his condition, Fujiwara decisively took the thermos and poured a lid full of water, feeding it to him. How are you? Do you need an ambulance? She kept asking while helping him drink. Cough. Cough. Yes. Yoru coughed the water back out and gave a weak nod. Severe hypertension could be fatal. Okay, just wait a bit. Fujiwara, hearing that he needed an ambulance, fumbled for her phone and dialed the nearby hospital's number. Thank you. Yoru finally recognized her. How bad is it? Fujiwara quickly gave the address over the phone and asked again. Tell the doctor to bring antihypertensive meds. Yoru held back his dizziness and responded. Don't worry, it'll be okay. Fujiwara, seeing that he still hadn't improved, kept reassuring him while nervously talking on the phone. She didn't dare take her eyes off him. Once the call ended, she looked at Yoru, whose breathing was still shallow. She wanted to pat his chest to help but pulled her hand back halfway. You couldn't just touch a patient. Given Yoru's condition, she didn't dare leave either. She could only stay beside him, constantly offering words of encouragement, telling him to hang in there and that the ambulance was on the way. Yoru was almost unconscious by this point. He had no energy to think about Fujiwara. The ambulance arrived quickly. Within 10 minutes, Fujiwara watched the medical staff load Yoru into the vehicle. He was all alone. What if something happened? She didn't hesitate and got on 2 antihypertensive meds, 4 oral meds, oxygen. Lying in the ambulance, Yoru rattled off a list fluently. The doctors sprang into action. After the injections and oxygen were administered, Yoru finally felt some relief. What happened to you, kid? The doctor asked. Emotional agitation. History of hypertension. Fever, cold, labored breathing. Yoru slowly explained, then turned his head to look at Fujiwara. The pink-haired student council secretary with a black butterfly ribbon in her bangs. Thank you. Yoru said weakly. Ah. Don't mention it. Fujiwara was momentarily at a loss, waving her hand awkwardly. Soon, the ambulance arrived at the hospital. Several nurses wheeled Yoru into the emergency room. There was a free healthcare policy. Completely free. Fujiwara stayed by his side. The emergency doctor came to ask about his medical history and cause of symptoms. Then came blood tests, chest x-rays, court scans, urine tests. Fujiwara stayed busy the whole time. Fetching films, running between departments, bringing water. After all, since she was already there, she couldn't just walk away. It lasted until noon. In a general ward, Yoru lay in bed, weak, breathing in the unpleasant smell of disinfectant, waiting for the doctor to arrive. Kitakami-kun, since you've contacted your family, I'll get going now? Fujiwara handed him a cup of warm water and placed it by the bedside. Thanks, Fujiwara-san. Yoru had been watching her run around for him the whole time and was deeply grateful. Just then, a cardiovascular doctor walked in. She held a medical file in one hand and a bunch of scan results and test reports in the other. It's okay, just rest. Don't be nervous. The doctor was a woman in her 50s, speaking gently. Yoru nodded quietly, watching her. Fujiwara sat nearby, listening attentively. You've caught a cold and have had a persistent low-grade fever. You're significantly overweight, have a history of high blood pressure, and are emotionally unstable. That caused your blood pressure to spike, but once it settles, you'll be fine. However, you have mild inflammation in your heart. Likely caused by low immunity due to the cold and fever. There's also a slight issue with the left atrial narrowing. The doctor flipped through the file calmly as she explained. Nearby, Fujiwara sat upright, her face turning pale. The heart? That sounded serious. So scary. Even though she was healthy, she couldn't help but tremble. I already knew about the left atrium. Isn't that something I didn't need to worry about? Yoru was fairly familiar with his condition and didn't seem particularly alarmed. That was before. Now, with your high blood pressure, we recommend surgery. A minimally invasive one, with virtually no risk. As for the mild heart inflammation, that's not a big deal either. But your high blood pressure and obesity-prone body type. This will take time. The doctor had long been used to life and death. Her expression showed no signs of concern. Besides, Yoru wasn't in any real danger. Death wasn't even on the table. How long do I need to stay in the hospital? How long will the treatment take? Yoru asked the question he cared about most. It was the most important one. He had limited time. He needed to lose weight, catch up on studies. It concerned whether he could stay at Shuchen. Depends on the situation. Given your condition, at least 2 weeks in the hospital, possibly longer. The treatment will take 1.5 to 2 months. Of course, since your high blood pressure is mainly emotional, you can choose to stay home if you prefer. The doctor looked directly at Yoru as she spoke. Yoru showed no reaction on his face, but his heart was filled with despair. Only after a long while did he nod. The doctor left. Fujiwara stood up and forced a complex smile. Then I'll get going. I hope you recover soon, Kitakami-kun. Yeah. Yoru nodded, trying not to think about anything depressing. He took out his phone. He messaged Gabriel and Megumi and requested leave from Hiratsuka, then started scrolling through news. He couldn't allow himself to dwell on anything stressful or frustrating. At least not for now. A while later, Yoru's father and mother, Toyotani and Megumi, came to visit. They paid extra to upgrade him to a VIP room. When asked about what happened, Yoru simply shook his head and mentioned the recent train storm. The doctor reassured his parents that it wasn't anything serious. The couple stayed until nightfall before leaving. Yoru just wanted some quiet. The next day, he cooperated with the doctor. Took his medicine and got injections. He spent most of the day lying in bed. After school in the afternoon, Gabriel and Nanami came to visit. Gabriel asked several times to make sure he was okay before leaving. Yoru asked her to look after San-san. The next afternoon after school, Megumi came by and sat by his bed. Would you like some fruit? She brought some along. No need. Yoru looked at the treasure chest progress bar above her head. Already more than halfway full. And rolled over. But he had been lying down too long. His arm was numb, and he couldn't turn properly. What's wrong? Megumi asked. Arms gone numb. Yoru shook his head with a bitter smile. Want me to give you a massage? Megumi sat closer. Sure. Sure. Yoru's eyes widened slightly. This was physical contact. Megumi, ever pure, didn't think much of it. Just a simple massage. Her hands were so soft. Of course, Yoru couldn't help feeling happy, chatting with her. Soon, he noticed something odd. Or rather, something delightful. When Megumi massaged him, the progress bar for the golden treasure chest filled several times faster. Half an hour later, Megumi had to leave. Kato-san, can you come and talk with me from time to time? Yoru couldn't help but ask. He was desperate to open the chest. Sure. Megumi only had Yoru as a friend, so of course she agreed. By day 8, his blood pressure had stabilized. Yoru spent his days either lying in bed playing on his phone or reviewing his studies. Yu and Yukino came to visit. Yoru hadn't expected that. I heard from Hiratsuka-sensei. Everyone at school is saying you were in a car accident or had a mental breakdown. I was so shocked when I heard. Yu said. Yukino didn't speak. They stayed for a bit before preparing to leave. Here are some review notes. Don't fall behind. Yukino handed over a notebook silently as they left. On day 23, Yoru was discharged. Next came scheduling minimally invasive surgery on the left atrium, done in 2 stages. During this period, Gabriel and Nanami came twice more, and Shizuka Hiratsuka once. Yu and Yukino didn't return. While packing to leave the hospital, Yoru weighed himself. He hadn't exercised for over 2 weeks, but had been eating his mother's low-fat meals. He had lost around 7 to 8 pounds. I guess the moment I'm discharged, it'll be time for final exams. Yoru sat in the back of his father's Lexus, murmuring as he looked out the window. All of this was Eriri's fault. Damn her. Yoru nearly let his emotions spiral again, but he fought to stay calm. On day 29, it was time for surgery in the now familiar ward. The operation was minimally invasive, with only a small incision made in his chest. On day 31, Yoru had recovered. Under general anesthesia, He'd slept soundly. On day 33, Megami came to visit. The golden treasure chest was nearly full. Ready to open. On day 38, he underwent the second surgery, getting one more scar. Yaru's body had finally recovered. Summer was coming. The weather was getting hot. One more checkup next week, and he'd be discharged. On day 41, Megami came to visit. The treasure chest was just a sliver away from opening. Just 10 more minutes. At that moment, Yaru was filled with excitement. Yaru's hair was long. If Ariri were here, she'd instantly recognize him as the protagonist of her nightmares. I'm being discharged next week. I'm fine. Thanks, Kato-san. Yoru was both excited and nervous. That's great to hear. But Yoru-kun, how did you end up with high blood pressure? Megami had been wanting to ask for a while. But she held back, worried it might upset him. Because of Sawamura Ariri. Hey. Yoru's expression immediately turned cold. If he had the power, he definitely wouldn't let Ariri off. Sawamura Ariri? Megami asked. Yeah. I didn't really like her to begin with. But after seeing her argue with Yutaha, she started looking down on me often. I even suspected she was the culprit. A vivid image of a cute little bitch with white thigh highs popped into Yoru's mind. Did Sawamura-san and Kasumijoku-senpai not get along? A culprit? Megami seemed to recall something. Her expression slowly turned blank. Who knows what a rich girl like her is really thinking? Who knows what kind of person she really is? What kind of relationship she had with Kasumijoku Yutaha? Yeah, I mean, it'd be low of her to steal someone's personal item just out of spite, but it's not impossible. But on the flip side, no one would ever suspect her. Not even Kasumijoku Yutaha, right? Yoru muttered under his breath as he stared at the golden treasure chest above Megami's head. The next second, the chest suddenly opened. Click. Only Yoru could hear that sound. Once the golden chest opened, a radiant light poured out, blinding him momentarily. 2 shimmering golden streaks of light shot out from inside and entered Yoru's body. It all happened in a flash. Yoru froze, and 2 lines of information surfaced in his mind. Yoru-kun, I just remembered something really important. Do you remember the time you told me you saw the light from a phone shining inside a tent while you were on your way to shower? Megami suddenly stood up and grabbed Yoru's hand with a serious, solemn expression. What is it? Yoru didn't even have time to check what he'd received. I couldn't sleep that night. I was awake in the second half. When I saw a light outside, I lifted my head and took a look. I was sleeping right across from Sawamura-san's tent. There was light coming from inside. I didn't know she and Kasumijoku-senpai had a bad relationship back then. I didn't see what you did, so I thought someone just got up in the middle of the night. But now that you've said this, it came back to me. Megami's face turned serious, though she still looked uncertain. Kato-san, are you serious? Yoru, who had been suspecting Ariri all along, finally had another piece of evidence. He couldn't sit still. He jumped out of bed on the spot. His eyes widened as adrenaline flooded his system, and he began pacing the room. Yoru-kun. Try not to get too worked up. This still doesn't prove Sawamura-san did it. What if it's a misunderstanding? There's no real evidence. Megami said with concern. No, you don't understand. Yoru stopped, overwhelmed with excitement. Mind reading, sense emotional states and read inner thoughts. Consumes mental energy when used. Time rewind, return to any moment within the past month. Activates automatically upon death. One-time use. These were the abilities Yoru had obtained from the golden treasure chest. Mind reading was obviously useful in countless ways. He could use it one by one on each student from the school trip. He'd easily find the culprit. Time rewind was an active skill. Unfortunately, it could only be used once. After activation, he could rewind time to any point up to a month ago, carrying all his memories. But he'd spent most of the past month in the hospital, so it wasn't worth using yet. This time rewind skill had truly astonishing potential. Phew. Yoru took several deep breaths before sitting back down. He had just undergone heart surgery. He couldn't be reckless. Stay calm. Megami's face remained calm as she began doing deep breathing herself. Got it. Thank you, Kato-san. Yoru decided not to use time rewind yet. He'd first try mind reading on Ariri. If Ariri really was the culprit. The fat neat lying in bed began replaying everything from before the school trip to now. He was on the verge of breaking down. Stay calm. Breathe. Regaining his composure, Yoru looked gratefully at Megami. Just call me Megami. She said with a smile. Eh? Yoru blinked. Aren't we friends? Megami asked, resting her chin on her hand. Then. Megami? Yoru gulped. Of course, he didn't delude himself into thinking Megami liked him. A fat, Miserable shut-in. Well then, Yoru-kun, I'll be heading out. It wasn't the weekend, so Megumi had to go. See you. Yoru didn't stop her. He needed quiet time too. The room returned to silence. Yoru lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Time rewind. A miraculous ability. He could use it to get rich. Stocks, lottery. He could use it to save lives. For example, if he died in an accident or became disabled from a fall, it would activate automatically and send him back with his memories. If he were diagnosed with cancer, maybe going back a month could make a difference. In short, it was amazing. Yoru thought about getting revenge on Kaguya Shinomiya and Kasumijoka Utaha first, venting his anger with the ability. But it felt like a waste. Using it for temporary satisfaction. Time rewind would stay the same. The golden chest could only be opened once. Mind reading wouldn't be affected. Let's find the culprit first. Yoru told himself. If Ireri really was the culprit and everything was her doing, he was willing to gamble. He might not use it at all. It was a gamble. Yoru touched the camera lens on his phone. Chapter 65, in a lavishly decorated bedroom full of cute girlish charm. Ireri, normally proud and aloof, always cold toward boys, now sat curled up in a corner, her hair a mess, twin tails undone, a huge red slap mark on her pale cheek. Tears streamed down her face as she trembled uncontrollably, utterly helpless. Standing before her was a fat NEET with long bangs covering his eyes and a bulky frame. Ireri sobbed, begging pitifully for mercy. Her heart was drowning in despair and fear. You want me to let you go? Sawamura, you ruined my life. So now, I'm going to ruin yours. The NEET roared in pure rage and reached out with a massive hand toward the helpless Ireri. No. Please, no. Ireri, dressed in loose pajamas and covered with a light blanket, suddenly twitched her eyebrows and jolted awake with a loud gasp. As soon as she opened her eyes, she instinctively sat up and bent forward, gasping heavily for air. The familiar surroundings of her room slowly settled into focus. Why am I having nightmares again? Coming to her senses, Ireri realized it had been another nightmare. She reached out and wiped the cold sweat from her forehead. If you've done nothing wrong, there's nothing to fear from. It's not even dawn yet. She glanced toward the balcony. It was still pitch black outside. After sitting for a while, her body temperature started to drop rapidly. The cold sweat from the nightmare had soaked her luxurious silk pajamas, sticking tightly to her delicate skin, leaving her with a clammy chill. Pulling off the blanket, Ireri slipped into her slippers. Seeing that it was only 4:30 a.m., she decided to take a shower. In the bathroom. Completely naked, Ireri washed her fair and soft body in front of the mirror and lightly pinched her own cute cheeks. Who knows who'll end up getting lucky with such a cute little girl. After bathing, feeling refreshed, she returned to bed to get some more sleep. 2 hours later, she headed off to school like usual. It had been over a month since Yoru last came to school. Ireri hadn't seen him since that morning. At first, rumors spread that he'd been bullied into dropping out. Later, word around school was that Yoru had a mental breakdown and jumped off a platform on his way to school. Or jumped off a building. Or had been beaten into a vegetative state. Or had schizophrenia and was sent to a mental hospital. Countless rumors. No one knew which ones were even remotely true. Ireri walked into Shuchin Academy in silence, her head down, gripping her backpack straps tightly. Aku. At the hospital, while packing up to leave, Yoru suddenly sneezed for no reason. He'd just finished his final checkup yesterday. His body was healthy enough for discharge. Just had to watch his mood and avoid getting angry too often. Dad, let's go. Yoru confirmed nothing was left behind and spoke to his father. All right. Kitakami Toyotani nodded, grabbed the luggage, and left the hospital with Yoru. At the firm insistence of both parents, Yoru had to stay home for a few days to ease his mother's heart after all the recent worry. A few missed days of school wouldn't matter much. Especially since the end-of-term exams were only 2 weeks away, followed by summer vacation. Sitting in the back seat, Yoru sent a message to Megumi, Gabriel, Nanami, and Hiratsuka Shizuka. He let them know he was discharged. Ding. During a break after morning reading, Nanami, who was resting her head on the desk to nap, suddenly heard her phone chime. She didn't have many friends, so messages were rare. Taking it out, she saw it was from Yoru. He'd informed her he was out of the hospital and thanked her for visiting. Nanami smiled, happy to hear a friend was recovering. Why is Aoyama smiling so sweetly? Sorata pretended to look at the scenery but was actually watching Nanami the whole time. He liked the things he couldn't have even more. He had never given up. Since Yoru stopped coming to school, Sorata was secretly thrilled and even felt a new glimmer of hope. Time would erase everything. He didn't understand why Aoyama and Kitakami were so close. Surely Aoyama couldn't fall for a gross, fat NEET like that? That's what Sorata fantasized with glee. Once she cooled off, he planned to approach her again. After replying to Yoru, Nanami put away her phone and noticed someone staring at her. Turning her head, she saw it was Candace Sorata. The smile on her face instantly vanished and was replaced by a look of disgust. The more she saw his face, the more nauseated she felt, unable to stop thinking about being tricked into pretending he was her boyfriend. Gross. Disgusting. She muttered quietly. Meanwhile, Yoru had returned home. Not to his apartment, but to his parents' house. Normally at this hour, his parents would be at work. But for this special day, they both stayed home. Go take a bath first. The hospital probably didn't have any decent ones, right? His mother, Kitakami Megumi, still a stunning beauty, gave Yoru the suggestion with a teasing tone, but inwardly, she was overjoyed. Okay. Yoru was starving. He glanced at the table full of food, a spread that rivaled a high-end buffet, and reluctantly went to bathe. No hospital bath could compare to the one at home. After cleaning up, he ran a hot bath and stood before the full-length mirror, observing his body. Without exercising, he had lost over 20 pounds in the past month or so, reaching a weight loss plateau. 2 faint reddish scars remained on his chest, each about 2 centimeters long. Phew. Closing his eyes and taking a deep breath, adrenaline surged through Yoru. He desperately wanted to know who had caused all this. And Ariri. He stripped off his underwear and sank into the bathtub,